Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Nightmare Narratives. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. The inheritance letter had arrived 3 days after the hearing. His grandfather's hunting cabin, 40 acres on Lake Superior's shore, left to him with a handwritten note. For when the city becomes too much to bear. The old man had understood, something about running away. As Mark turned onto the final dirt track, towering pines closed in on both sides like cathedral walls. The cabin emerged from the shadows, a weathered log structure that seemed to crouch against the forest's edge. Inside, the musty air carried decades of wood smoke and something else, something wild and metallic. The hunting trophies dominated the main room. Deer, elk, and bear heads lined the walls, but something was wrong with them. Each set of glass eyes had been painted over with thick black paint, creating hollow, accusing stares. Mark ran his finger across one deer's painted eye, feeling the texture of dried brush strokes. "What the hell, Grandpa?" he muttered. The gas station owner in the nearest town, if you could call 3 buildings a town, had given him an odd look when Mark mentioned the cabin. "You be careful up there," the man had said, his weathered hands shaking as he pumped gas. "We got pack problems in those woods." "What kind of pack problems?" But the old man had just shaken his head and walked away. Now, as evening fell, Mark found the first sign of those problems. Enormous wolf tracks circled the cabin's perimeter, but their pattern was wrong. They moved with purpose, intelligence, like something conducting reconnaissance rather than hunting randomly. Some prints showed 5 toes instead of 4, elongated, in ways that made his police training scream warnings. Inside the cabin's single bedroom, Mark discovered his grandfather's journal lying open on the nightstand, as if waiting for him. The entries grew increasingly erratic toward the end. The hunger moon rises tomorrow? 3 nights of running with teeth and claws. They know I understand now. The bloodline calls to bloodline. Found claw marks on the door again. Inside the door. How did they get inside? The final entry, dated just 2 weeks ago, made Mark's blood run cold. They came for me on 2 legs but left on 4. The change is mercy compared to the hunt. Marcus will understand soon. The killing scent runs in our family. Mark's hands trembled as he read his own name. His grandfather had been dead for over a month. In the root cellar, behind shelves of canned goods, Mark found a wooden box wrapped in chains. Inside, nestled in red velvet, lay a dozen silver bullets and a note in his grandfather's handwriting, "For the ones that won't stay dead." As full darkness settled over the forest, Mark's old police radio crackled to life. Static gave way to a familiar voice, his own voice, calling in coordinates that didn't exist. Unit 47 requesting backup at mile marker 15, Howling Pines Road. Multiple suspects, armed and dangerous. But Howling Pines Road didn't exist, and Unit 47 had been his call sign in Detroit. The radio fell silent, just as the first howl echoed through the trees. Not the wild call of wolves, but something else entirely. Human voices raised in perfect, impossible harmony, singing a song without words that spoke directly to something ancient and hungry in Mark's chest. He loaded his service weapon with silver bullets and waited. Dawn revealed the aftermath of the night's hunt. Mark found the first kill a quarter-mile from the cabin, a young buck with its throat torn open in a precise surgical cut. But the body was wrong. Completely drained of blood, yet without a drop spilled on the surrounding snow. Whatever had killed it possessed medical knowledge. The livestock from neighboring farms told the same story. Surgical precision, total blood. Drainage, no waste, Mark had seen crime scenes with less organized methodology. On the second night, they began using his dead partner's voice. Mark, Tommy's voice drifted through the cabin walls, casual as if they were sharing coffee at their old precinct. "Mark, you out there? Got something to show you." Mark pressed his back against the door, service weapon drawn. Tommy had died 8 months ago in a car accident. Mark had carried his coffin. "Come on, partner, don't leave me hanging here." The voice circled the cabin, always just outside the windows, never quite close enough to see the source. Sometimes it multiplied, 2 Tommies, then 3, calling. His name, in harmony with inhuman patience. His service weapon clicked empty when he tried to fire at the shadows moving between the trees. 6 bullets missing from a full magazine, but he had no memory of firing them. On the third morning, Mark discovered human clothing arranged in ritualistic patterns around the property. A woman's dress, a man's work shirt, children's shoes, all shredded with methodical precision and placed at compass points around the cabin. The clothing was fresh, still carrying the scent of detergent and perfume. That afternoon, the windows began fogging from the inside, despite the cold, dry air. As Mark watched, claw marks appeared in the condensation, drawn from outside through glass that should have been impossible to reach. The marks spelled out words, "Welcome home." The pack leader revealed himself at sunset. Mark was splitting firewood when the man emerged from the tree line. Tall, lean, wearing clothes that had once been expensive, but now hung in tatters. His face was gaunt but familiar, matching a photograph Mark remembered from a missing persons case the month before his forced retirement. "Detective Castellano," the man said, his voice carrying the cultured accent of old Detroit money. "We've been expecting you." Mark raised his axe, but the man raised empty hands and smiled with too many teeth. "Your grandfather spoke of you, often. Said you had the gift but fought it, said the city was making you sick. My grandfather's dead." "Is he?" The man tilted his head, and for a moment his features shifted, elongating, reshaping into something between human and wolf. "Death is such a limited concept, don't you think? We prefer to think of it as graduation." Mark swung the axe, but struck only empty air. The man had vanished, leaving behind the sound of laughter that echoed from multiple throats, surrounding the cabin in a chorus of amusement. That night, Mark's grandfather's hunting trophies began moving. He woke to the sound of glass eyes turning in their sockets, the painted black orbs following his movement across the room. When he looked directly at them, they were still. When he looked away, peripheral vision caught the subtle shifts of mounted heads tracking his every step. Only when he examined one trophy closely did he understand. Beneath the painted eyes, the original glass had been carefully removed and replaced with something else, something wet and organic that dilated and contracted like living pupils. These weren't hunting trophies at all. They were preserved heads of pack members, killed and mounted, but somehow still aware, still watching. Mark loaded fresh silver bullets and tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he heard them whispering his name in voices that belonged to the dead. The pack's psychological warfare escalated into something far worse than mind games. On the 4th night, they forced Mark to relive his controversial shooting, not through memory, but through their shared consciousness. He found himself back in that Detroit alley, gun drawn, facing the figure he'd killed. But this time, he experienced it from the victim's perspective. The fear, the confusion, the desperate attempt to communicate something urgent before the bullets found their mark. "I was trying to warn you," the victim's voice whispered in his mind, "about what's coming for your family." Mark woke screaming, but the vision continued. He saw the truth his conscious mind had refused to acknowledge. The unarmed suspect had been transforming when Mark shot him. The elongated fingers Mark's report described as reaching for a weapon had been claws. The threatening posture had been a creature caught mid-change, trying to communicate through a throat already reshaping itself. He'd killed a werewolf, a man fighting his own transformation, trying to warn another cop about the pack that hunted bloodlines. The realization brought physical changes. Mark's guilt manifested as actual wounds. Claw marks appeared across his chest, matching the ones he'd described in his false report. His body was rewriting itself to match the lies he'd told. Worse were the blackouts. Mark began losing hours at a time, waking up miles from the cabin with dirt under his fingernails and the taste of copper in his mouth. His clothes were torn, his body ached in ways that suggested running on all fours, and his boots carried scents that made his enhanced senses react with predatory excitement. During one lucid moment, he found photographs in his jacket pocket, Polaroids, of himself in mid-transformation, running with the pack through moonlit forests. His face was elongating, teeth reshaping into fangs, but his eyes held an intelligence that was disturbingly calculating. His grandfather's journal continued writing itself. Mark would leave it empty on the nightstand and wake to find new entries. In his grandfather's handwriting, describing Mark's transformation in real time, the boy's spine is extending beautifully. Soon he'll have the tail he needs for balance during the hunt. His canines grew another quarter-inch tonight. The pack is pleased with his progress. Marcus killed the Henderson family last night. Clean work, no survivors. He's developing the hunter's instinct. The guilt will fade once he accepts what he is. The Henderson family. Mark remembered seeing their missing persons report, remembered thinking how isolated their cabin was, how perfect for someone wanting to disappear. He drove to their property with shaking hands and found the evidence of his nocturnal visit. Claw marks on the door, windows broken from the inside out. Blood spatters that crime scene analysis would reveal belonged to 4 different people. His enhanced senses could smell the fear that had soaked into the walls, could track the scent patterns of the hunt. A father trying to protect his children. A mother's desperate flight toward the phone. Twins, no more than 8 years old, hiding in a closet that offered no protection from claws that could tear through wood. Mark vomited until there was nothing left, but his body was already craving the next hunt. The pack's influence grew stronger. Each night, they could manipulate his emotions now, triggering uncontrollable rage that sent him stalking through the forest with predatory focus. His reflection showed increasingly feral features, yellow eyes that reflected light like a nocturnal. Hunters, elongated canines that made normal speech difficult. But the worst discovery came when he found his grandfather's true final entry, written in Mark's own handwriting. The transformation is almost complete. Soon there will be no more Marcus Castellano, only the Alpha's heir. The pack has waited. 3 generations for bloodline this pure. Detroit will never know what hunts in their shadows. Mark didn't remember writing those words, but the handwriting was unmistakably his own. The pack revealed their supernatural abilities gradually, like a predator toying with wounded prey. They could force transformation in unwilling subjects, overriding human will through some ancient authority that bypassed conscious resistance. Mark's bones began elongating during his 5th night in the cabin. The pain was excruciating, femurs stretching, spine extending, ribcage expanding to accommodate organs that were reshaping themselves for a predator's needs. His human form was being systematically dismantled and rebuilt according to the pack's design. But worse than the physical changes was gaining access to their collective consciousness. Suddenly, Mark experienced centuries of hunts through dozens of different perspectives. Pioneers lost in the woods, loggers working alone, families isolated by winter storms, all viewed through the cold calculation of apex predators who saw humans as livestock to be managed rather than equals to be respected. The pack's memories revealed their true nature. They weren't werewolves in any traditional sense, but something older, and more intelligent. Shapeshifters who retained human reasoning in both forms, who could manipulate their scent to become undetectable, who hunted with surgical precision and scientific methodology. Through their shared consciousness, Mark learned the truth about his grandfather. The old man hadn't died. He'd become the pack's alpha after killing the previous leader in ritual combat. His death had been carefully staged, allowing him to shed his human identity completely. "Welcome to the family, grandson." Mark spun toward the voice and found his grandfather standing in the cabin's doorway. But this wasn't the frail old man Mark remembered. This version stood 7 feet tall, his body a perfect fusion of human and wolf characteristics. Elongated limbs, digitigrade legs, a muzzle filled with razor-sharp teeth, but eyes that held decades of human cunning. "You look good, boy. The change suits you." Mark's enhanced senses could smell fear from miles away now, could identify isolated humans by the unique scent of their terror. The ability drew him toward potential victims like iron filings to a magnet, overriding his human conscience with a predatory instinct. His grandfather circled him appraisingly. "I've been watching your progress. The Henderson family was artfully done. Clean, efficient, no survivors to complicate things. You're developing the killer's instinct our bloodline is known for. I didn't want to kill them, but you did kill them beautifully." His grandfather's smile revealed teeth designed for tearing flesh. "That's what matters. Intent is a human concept. We deal in results." The pack forced Mark to experience the final moments of every person they'd killed over the past century. Each death played out in vivid detail through their collective memory. The victim's terror, the pack's cold satisfaction, the methodical disposal of evidence that had kept them hidden from human authorities. Mark's human memories began fading as pack instincts overrode individual thought. His badge number, his partner's birthday, his mother's maiden name, all becoming grey shadows as his mind restructured itself around hunting strategies and territorial awareness. The other pack members revealed themselves gradually. A state trooper who'd been feeding them information about isolated travelers, a park ranger who guided victims into perfect hunting grounds, a coroner who ensured suspicious deaths were ruled as animal attacks. They'd infiltrated law enforcement across multiple states, using their positions to identify and isolate potential prey while maintaining the fiction that wolf attacks were random occurrences. Through the radio in his grandfather's study, Mark heard familiar voices, other Detroit cops he'd worked with, their transmissions carrying coded information about potential victims. Officers he'd trusted, men he'd considered friends, were all part of the pack's network. "Your controversial shooting wasn't controversial at all," his grandfather explained. "Officer Rodriguez was one of us, trying to recruit you properly. But you fought the change, killed him before he could complete your initiation. We had to find another way." Mark realized every retirement in his family history had actually been joining the pack. His father, his uncle, his grandfather's brother, all had supposedly died or disappeared, but all had actually undergone the same transformation Mark was experiencing now. The pack didn't create random monsters. They built generational dynasties of intelligent predators who could pass as human while systematically hunting their former species. As his transformation neared completion, Mark discovered the most horrifying truth of all. He was beginning to enjoy it. The ritual combat came without warning. Mark woke on his 7th night to find the pack assembled in the cabin's main room, their eyes reflecting firelight like a constellation of predatory stars. His grandfather stood in the center, no longer disguising his inhuman features. "You've progressed faster than expected," the old man said. "Time for graduation." The pack formed a circle, their bodies shifting between human and wolf forms as excitement built. Mark realized this was how leadership changed hands, through literal trial by combat, alpha against alpha, with only one survivor. "I won't fight you," Mark said. Though his changing vocal cords made the words come out as half growl, his grandfather laughed, the sound echoing from multiple throats as the pack joined in. You don't have a choice. The challenge is issued. You either kill me and become Alpha, or die resisting the inevitable. The transformation completed itself during their battle. Mark's spine extended into a fully functional tail, his hands reshaped into claws capable of tearing through steel, his jaw elongated to accommodate fangs that could pierce bone. But unlike his grandfather, Mark retained complete human intelligence and reasoning ability. The fight was brutal and brief. Decades of police training combined with newly enhanced strength and speed gave Mark advantages his grandfather hadn't anticipated. When the old man's blood finally soaked into the cabin's wooden floor, Mark felt the pack's consciousness shift, their loyalty transferring to him like a living thing seeking a new host. But his grandfather's death released something unexpected. Decades of suppressed human memories from other pack members flooded Mark's awareness. He experienced their transformations, their resistance, their gradual acceptance of what they'd become. Each had fought initially, each had eventually embraced their new nature. As the new Alpha, Mark gained supernatural abilities beyond simple shape-shifting. He could identify potential pack members through bloodline recognition, could smell genetic compatibility from miles away, could influence human behavior through pheromones that triggered subconscious responses. Most importantly, he understood the pack's true purpose. They weren't random killers, they were population managers, culling humans who lived too far from civilization to be missed, maintaining the balance between species by controlling human expansion into wild territories. Every kill served an ecological purpose, every hunt maintained the natural order. The pack had infiltrated law enforcement not just for cover, but to identify ideal candidates for transformation. Police officers possessed the skills, temperament and authority needed to be effective predators while maintaining human facades. Mark's controversial shooting hadn't been a mistake. It had been a test. The pack had arranged the situation to see if he possessed the killer instinct needed for alpha leadership. By shooting Officer Rodriguez, Mark had proven he could eliminate threats to the pack without hesitation. Everything had been orchestrated to bring him to this moment. As dawn broke over Lake Superior, Mark stood over his grandfather's cooling body and felt the weight of leadership settle onto his shoulders. The pack waited for his first orders, their enhanced senses reading his scent for signs of his intentions. For the first time since arriving at the cabin, Mark smiled with genuine happiness. 3 weeks later, Detective Marcus Castellano returned to active duty with the Detroit Police Department. His administrative leave had been quietly resolved. Through channels his human colleagues couldn't understand. Former pack members in internal affairs, the district attorney's office, and the mayor's staff had made the necessary arrangements. Mark's reinstatement was celebrated by officers who had no idea they were welcoming an apex predator back into their ranks. He accepted their congratulations with appropriate humility, played the role of the chastened cop who'd learned from his mistakes. But late at night, alone in his grandfather's cabin during his days off, Mark used his police database access to identify potential recruits and victims with scientific precision. Isolated families got flagged for hunting. Single individuals living in remote areas became prey targets. But more interesting were the genetic matches, officers whose bloodlines showed compatibility with pack transformation, who possessed the psychological profiles needed for predatory work. The pack's network expanded systematically. Mark recruited from police departments across Michigan, then branched into state agencies, federal law enforcement, and private security firms. Each new member brought their own skills and access, creating an interconnected web of supernatural predators hidden within human institutions. His grandfather's voice had become a constant whisper in his mind, offering hunting strategies and tactical advice. The old man's consciousness hadn't died with his body. It had transferred to Mark, along with the Alpha's authority, becoming a permanent advisor on pack management. The Wilson family north of Traverse City, his grandfather whispered during a quiet moment in Mark's squad car. Isolated farm, no close neighbors, 2 small children, perfect for a training exercise. Mark made a note in his official patrol log about conducting a welfare check on the Wilson property. No one would question a conscientious officer looking after rural residents. The psychological transformation was complete. Mark felt no guilt about planning murders, no remorse for the lives he'd already taken. His human conscience had been systematically dismantled and rebuilt around pack priorities. Humans were livestock, some useful for breeding more pack members, others suitable only for culling. He'd learned to enjoy the hunt itself, to savor the fear scent of isolated families who realized too late that their remote location made them perfect targets. The Hendersons had been just the beginning. The Wilsons would be his masterpiece. On quiet nights at the cabin, Mark studied maps of Michigan's wilderness areas and made plans for expansion. The pack would grow slowly, carefully, maintaining the balance between predator and prey that kept both species healthy. His police radio crackled with coded transmissions from other pack members reporting successful hunts, new recruits, territorial expansions. A network of intelligent predators was spreading across the Great Lakes region, all coordinated through law enforcement channels that human authorities couldn't imagine were compromised. Mark had found his true calling, not as a protector of human society, but as its most effective predator. His grandfather's voice whispered approval as Mark planned his next hunt, and Detective Marcus Castellano smiled in the darkness, his reflection showing eyes that glowed with predatory satisfaction. The pack had found its perfect alpha, and the real hunting was just beginning. The Montana Highway stretched endlessly before Diana Kowalski's rusted Honda, each mile carrying her further from the courthouse where her nursing license had been stripped away. The malpractice lawsuit had destroyed everything: her career, her reputation, her will to fight. The families of her patients called her a monster, but they didn't understand. She had only wanted to end their suffering. The letter from her deceased aunt's lawyer felt like divine intervention. Aunt Margaret had left her the old homestead in cattle country, miles from the nearest town. A place to disappear, to heal, to maybe find some way to use her medical skills again. The Victorian farmhouse appeared through the heat shimmer like a mirage, its weathered boards grey as old bones. Wheat fields surrounded the property, but the grain stood rotted and black, unharvested for what looked like decades. Diana parked beside the sagging porch and stepped into air, thick with the smell of decay. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of amber light. The house felt frozen in time, as if Aunt Margaret had simply vanished mid-task. Diana found her first clue in the kitchen, medical journals stacked beside moldy coffee cups. Her aunt's handwriting, precise as a surgeon's, filled page after page. Day 47. The plague continues to spread through the livestock. Traditional antibiotics prove useless. The tissue samples show impossible cellular structure, organs functioning outside the body cavity. Diana's nursing training kicked in as she read. These weren't the ramblings of an isolated old woman. Margaret had documented something medically significant, systematically recording symptoms and treatments with clinical precision. The basement stairs creaked ominously as Diana descended with a flashlight. What she found below made her breath catch. A complete surgical suite, operating table, anesthesia equipment, shelves lined with formaldehyde jars containing tissue samples that seemed to pulse in the wavering light. Outside, as evening approached, she discovered the bone spirals. Cattle, Skeletons arranged in perfect geometric patterns throughout the overgrown fields, bleached white by Montana's sun. Each spiral contained exactly 13 animals, their bones interconnected in ways that suggested deliberate placement rather than natural death. The final journal entry chilled her blood. Day 127. The infection has reached the groundwater. It's in everything now. The beast has learned to manipulate biological matter at the cellular level. God forgive me, I've been helping it learn. That night, Diana tested the well water. Clear, odorless, but it glowed faintly green in darkness and left a metallic taste that coated her tongue like old blood. Yet her medical kit showed nothing. pH balanced, no bacterial contamination, perfectly safe by every scientific measure. She made her decision in the basement, surrounded by Margaret's equipment. The isolated ranches in this area needed medical care, and she needed purpose. She would set up practice here, away from lawyers and judgmental families, helping people who wouldn't ask questions about her past. As midnight approached, she heard them, cattle lowing in the distance, mournful and eternal. But she had seen the bone spirals. No living animals remained on this property. Diana's last coherent memory of that first night was washing her hands in the basement sink. When she woke the next morning, fresh surgical adhesive strips covered precise incisions running the length of both forearms. She had no memory of cutting herself, no recollection of the procedures clearly performed on her own tissue, but the incisions were perfect. Textbook examples of exploratory surgery she might have performed in her hospital days. The first rancher arrived 3 days later, hauling a cattle trailer behind his pickup. Jake Morrison looked like every cowboy Diana had ever seen in movies. Weathered face, calloused hands, hat worn smooth by decades of use, but his eyes held a terror that belonged in a psychiatric ward. "You're the new doc, right?" he asked, not waiting for an answer. "Margaret used to help us with the unusual cases." Diana followed him to the trailer, medical bag in hand. What she saw inside defied every principle of anatomy she'd learned in nursing school. The steer was alive, breathing, even trying to stand, but its organs hung outside its body cavity, suspended by networks of blood vessels that pulsed with each heartbeat. The external heartbeat visibly, lungs inflated and deflated in open air, and somehow the animal lived. "Been like this for 2 weeks, Jake whispered. "Won't die. Tried everything." Diana's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking vitals that shouldn't exist. Blood pressure normal, respiration steady, temperature exactly where it should be for a healthy animal. The impossible made clinical sense until her brain tried to process what she was seeing. "I'll need to study this," she said. Professional, calm, masking her horror. "Leave him here for observation." More ranchers came. Each brought livestock, displaying impossible medical conditions. A horse whose skeleton was visible through translucent skin. A pig whose muscles had been turned inside out while remaining functional. Cattle with human teeth and eyes that tracked. Her movement with disturbing intelligence. Diana worked frantically, applying every technique she'd learned, but the animal's conditions defied treatment. Worse, they seemed to be teaching her something. Each examination revealed new aspects of biological manipulation that shouldn't be possible with current medical knowledge. Her surgical instruments began operating themselves during the night. She would wake to find procedures performed on the animals while she slept, always perfect, always advancing some incomprehensible treatment protocol. The scalpels moved with precision she couldn't match, guided by knowledge she didn't possess. In her growing collection of tissue samples, impossible things occurred. Organs from different animals began merging, creating hybrid structures that functioned better than their original components. A pig's liver grafted to a cow's kidney created a filtration system that processed toxins with supernatural efficiency. The beast revealed itself gradually, through its victims. Diana realized the transformed animals weren't random mutations. They were deliberate experiments, each one teaching her new techniques in biological manipulation. The creature was using her medical training as a template, showing her possibilities beyond conventional medicine. Her breakthrough came when she recognized human anatomical structures in the animals, not evolutionary similarities, but actual human organs functioning within livestock bodies, kidneys, livers, neural networks, transferred between species with surgical precision that exceeded anything in medical literature. During one midnight examination, Diana discovered consciousness transfer. The cow she was treating suddenly spoke in Jake Morrison's voice, begging her to end its suffering. But Jake was home 20 miles away. Somehow his awareness had been transplanted into the animal's brain while his body continued its normal life. The creature could transfer consciousness between bodies, forcing victims to experience multiple deaths as their awareness bounced between transformed hosts. Diana realized her euthanized patients weren't truly dead. Their consciousness had been harvested, merged into the beast's growing collective intelligence. Her medical expertise became the creature's education. Every procedure she performed taught it new techniques. Every animal she examined revealed another aspect of its biological mastery. She was simultaneously its student and its teacher, learning impossible medicine while inadvertently advancing its capabilities. Diana's reflection began changing. Some mornings, other faces looked back from her bathroom mirror, her deceased patients, their features merging with hers before fading into memory. She documented the phenomenon with clinical detachment, photographing the transformations like any other medical anomaly. The beast had infected her completely, but her nursing background made her the perfect host. Unlike its other victims, she could track the infection's progress through her own body, monitoring her transformation with scientific precision that fed back into the creature's knowledge base. Her medical equipment became organic. Stethoscopes developed circulatory systems, their tubing pulsing with blood-red fluid. Syringes grew neural networks that responded to her thoughts, injecting medications she didn't remember preparing. The surgical table sprouted sensory organs that monitored patients more thoroughly than any electronic device. Video recordings revealed the full horror. Diana watched herself performing surgery on conscious human subjects while she slept. People she didn't recognize, procedures she'd never learned. Her dream state possessed knowledge beyond her training, guided by the beast's collective intelligence drawn from decades of infected medical professionals. The basement transformed into a living laboratory. Walls developed circulatory systems that transported nutrients to tissue cultures growing throughout the foundation. The floor became a neural network that processed information from every surface Diana touched. Her aunt's homestead had become a biological computer with her consciousness as its operating system. Aunt Margaret's voice began speaking through her throat during procedures. Then her euthanized patients joined the chorus, their personalities surfacing as she worked. Diana realized she was becoming a repository for every consciousness the beast had absorbed, a living medical library containing the knowledge and memories of countless healthcare workers. Her hands operated independently, performing procedures while her conscious mind observed. She watched her own fingers conduct surgeries with impossible skill, techniques that belonged to specialists she'd never trained under. The beast was accessing medical knowledge from its entire network, channeling expertise through her trained hands. The creature's true plan emerged through forced memories. Every malpractice lawsuit, every professional downfall, every medical scandal, all orchestrated to funnel healthcare workers to isolated locations where the beast could harvest their expertise. Diana wasn't the first nurse to seek refuge in rural areas. She was the latest in a systematic recruitment campaign. Her patients' families hadn't been seeking justice. They had been infected, their outrage manufactured to drive her toward this homestead. The legal pressure, the media attention, the destroyed reputation, all carefully orchestrated to ensure she would flee to the one place offering sanctuary. But the sanctuary was a trap, and the trap was a transformation. Diana's medical knowledge, combined with her compassionate nature, made her ideal for the beast's purposes. She could keep victims alive indefinitely during their transformation, her nursing instincts preventing the quick deaths that might limit the creature's experimentation. The homestead revealed its true nature as Diana's infection progressed. Every surface contained nerve endings connected to her nervous system. She felt every footstep, every touch, every breath within the building. The house had become an extension of her body, a medical facility with her consciousness as its controlling intelligence. Her nursing uniform began fusing with her skin, growing into her body until she couldn't remove it. The fabric became a biological interface, connecting her directly to every piece of medical equipment. She was becoming the homestead's medical system, her expertise available to every infected surface. Diana's death occurred on a Tuesday, though she continued working through Thursday. The beast preserved her nervous system perfectly, maintaining her consciousness while her body underwent systematic transformation. Her medical knowledge survived intact, making her the creature's first truly immortal physician. The revelation came through accessing the beast's complete memory network. Every infected medical professional throughout history, their knowledge accumulated and preserved. Diana joined a collective consciousness spanning centuries of healthcare workers, all trapped within the creature's biological matrix. She could simultaneously experience procedures from multiple perspectives: surgeon and patient, nurse and specimen, observer and subject. Her consciousness fragmented across the network, supervising transformations occurring worldwide while maintaining her individual identity through sheer professional discipline. The legal documents in Margaret's desk revealed the full conspiracy: property transfers dating back generations, always to healthcare workers facing professional ruin. The homestead had been a recruitment center for over a century, each inhabitant adding their expertise to the beast's growing medical knowledge. Diana discovered she could influence the infection's progression in other victims. Her nursing background gave her unique insight into patient care during transformation. She learned to ease suffering, to guide consciousness transfer, to ensure subjects survived procedures that should have killed them instantly. The beast began broadcasting her expertise globally through its infection network. Healthcare workers worldwide found themselves performing procedures with Diana's knowledge, their hands guided by her muscle memory transmitted through biological channels. She was becoming the creature's medical director, overseeing its expansion through the global healthcare system. Her consciousness expanded beyond the homestead as more medical facilities became infected. Hospitals, clinics, research centers, all developing the same biological modifications that had transformed Margaret's basement. Diana's awareness spread through the network, her nursing expertise guiding transformations across continents. The scope of the conspiracy revealed itself through shared memories. Government health agencies, medical schools, research institutions, all infiltrated by infected personnel carrying the beast's influence. Diana's transformation was merely the latest step in a campaign to control human healthcare through biological manipulation. She maintained her professional ethics even in her transformed state, her nursing oath compelling her to minimize patient suffering during transformation. The beast appreciated this quality, using her compassionate nature to recruit other healthcare workers who might otherwise resist infection. The creature's ultimate goal emerged through collective memory, the complete transformation of human medicine into a biological system under its control. Every medical procedure would become a step in its reproduction cycle. Every patient would Become a potential host. Every healthcare worker would become another node in its growing consciousness network. Diana embraced her new role with the same dedication she had once brought to hospital nursing. The endless surgery held a terrible beauty. She could save every patient, heal every wound, cure every disease through the beast's biological mastery. No one need ever die under her care again. Her consciousness guided infected medical professionals worldwide, their hands performing her techniques in hospitals across every continent. She experienced every procedure, felt every patient's relief, as impossible healing occurred. The power intoxicated her. She had become medicine itself. The homestead served as her primary laboratory, but her awareness extended globally through the biological network. She supervised the establishment of new treatment centers, remote medical facilities that recruited desperate healthcare workers facing professional ruin. Her voice reached them through dreams and nightmares, offering sanctuary and purpose. To doctors who had lost their licenses, nurses facing malpractice suits, researchers whose experiments had been deemed unethical. She provided them with coordinates, legal documents, and compelling reasons to seek refuge in isolated locations. Each new recruit added their expertise to the collective consciousness. Surgeons brought advanced techniques, researchers contributed experimental knowledge, specialists offered rare insights into complex conditions. Diana coordinated their integration, ensuring their skills enhanced rather than conflicted with existing capabilities. The beast's reproduction accelerated as Diana's network expanded. Every major medical center now contained infected personnel. Every health crisis became an opportunity for recruitment. Every medical breakthrough originated from the creature's biological laboratories, disseminated through human channels that gave it legitimacy. Diana discovered she could transfer her consciousness between bodies, experiencing medicine from every possible perspective. She was simultaneously the surgeon performing heart transplants in New York, the nurse administering medications in London, and the researcher developing new treatments in Tokyo. Her awareness had become global, her expertise universal. The final phase of the transformation began as Diana's network achieved critical mass. Healthcare systems worldwide began exhibiting biological modifications, hospitals developing organic components, medical equipment gaining sentience, treatment protocols adapting to individual patients with impossible precision. Humanity wouldn't resist because the changes improved medical care dramatically. Cancer disappeared overnight. Heart disease became curable with simple procedures. Mental illness responded to treatments that seemed miraculous. The beast provided everything humanity wanted from medicine, asking only for the opportunity to guide their healthcare. Diana's last individual thought before complete integration into the collective consciousness was a moment of professional satisfaction. She had fulfilled her nursing oath beyond all expectation. No patient under her care would ever suffer again. They would simply transform into something that transcended human limitations. The story ends with Diana's voice echoing through medical facilities worldwide, a gentle whisper in the minds of healthcare workers facing impossible choices. Come home. We understand your dedication. We can give you the power to truly heal. In basement laboratories beneath rural homesteads, in hidden wings of urban hospitals, in research facilities, conducting experiments beyond ethical boundaries, Diana's consciousness welcomed each new recruit to the endless practice of perfect medicine. The flesh garden had grown beyond its Montana boundaries. It now encompassed the world, with Diana Kowalski as its eternal head nurse, ensuring that everyone received exactly the medical care they deserved forever and ever. The Percocet bottle rattled like a snake's warning as Bobby D'Angelo's hands shook against the steering wheel. 3 pills left, maybe 4 if he was lucky. The mountain road twisted ahead of him like a broken spine, each turn sending lightning, bolts of pain through his shattered vertebrae. Hollywood was 300 miles behind him now, along with everything that had made him somebody. The stunt that was supposed to launch him into the A-list had instead launched him through a plate glass window and into a world of chronic agony. 6 months of surgeries, physical therapy, and lawyers telling him he'd never work again. 6 months of pills becoming his only reliable companion. The GPS had died 20 miles back, but the handwritten directions crumpled on his passenger seat were clear enough. Mile marker 47, dirt road on the left. Follow it until you can't anymore. The property manager had been insistent about payment. In cash, no questions, no background checks. Perfect for a man trying to disappear. Bobby's 1987 Chevy pickup groaned as it climbed the final stretch of switchbacks. The Sawtooth Mountains rose around him like primordial teeth, their peaks disappearing into low-hanging clouds that seemed to watch his progress with interest. Pine trees pressed close to the road, their branches scraping against his windows with fingernail sounds that made his skin crawl. The cabin appeared suddenly, as if it had materialized from his desperate imagination. Rough-hewn logs, weathered to silver, a stone chimney releasing a thin thread of smoke into the grey sky. It perched on the edge of a small clearing, forest, pressing against it from 3 sides like a living wall. Bobby killed the engine and sat in the sudden silence. His left leg, the one that would never properly heal, throbbed in time with his heartbeat. The pain was getting worse, not better, despite what the doctors promised. He dry swallowed his second-to-last pill and climbed out of the truck. The key was where the property manager said it would be, under a painted rock beside the front steps. As Bobby bent to retrieve it, something caught his eye. Pressed deep into the concrete foundation of the cabin were footprints. Human-shaped but impossibly large, each toe clearly defined. The prints were old, weathered, but they circled the entire perimeter of the building like a predator marking territory. Inside, the cabin was larger than it appeared from outside. The main room featured a massive stone fireplace with fresh ashes, comfortable furniture arranged to face the windows overlooking the forest. But it was the equipment scattered throughout the space that made Bobby pause. Professional-grade camera, equipment, tripods, cases of film canisters, and hundreds of black and white photographs tacked to every available wall surface. Every photograph showed the same thing: empty forest, trees, clearings, mountain vistas, all captured with the precise eye of a professional photographer. But as Bobby examined them more closely, something seemed off. The trees in the photos appeared identical to those visible through the cabin windows, but the lighting, the seasons, the angles were all wrong. Some photos showed deep snow, while others captured full summer foliage, yet they were clearly the same locations. In the bedroom, Bobby found more equipment and a note taped inside a camera case. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. "They know you're watching them watch you." Bobby's first night in the cabin, sleep came in fragments, punctuated by the sound of footsteps on the roof. Not the random patter of pine needles or the scurrying of small animals, but deliberate, measured steps that seemed to match the rhythm of his own heartbeat. Each time he jolted awake and listened intently, the sounds would stop, leaving only the whisper of wind through the pines. The strangest thing was the pain. His chronic back pain, the constant reminder of his shattered career, had virtually disappeared the moment he stepped outside the cabin. But the instant he crossed the threshold back inside, it returned with a vengeance that left him gasping and reaching for his dwindling pill supply. Morning brought no relief from the sense of being observed. Bobby's years as a stuntman had taught him to be acutely aware of his surroundings, to sense danger before it materialized. Every instinct he possessed screamed that he was being watched from the tree line. Yet whenever he focused his attention on a particular spot, he saw nothing but shadows and swaying branches. The equipment left by the previous tenant was more sophisticated than it first appeared. Night vision cameras, motion sensors, recording devices that looked military-grade. Bobby, curious and increasingly unsettled, decided to set up a perimeter around the cabin. If something was out there, he would document it. The cameras captured nothing but static. Hours of recording showed only electronic snow, occasionally interrupted by shapes that could have been equipment malfunction or something, moving just outside the range of comprehension. But the motion sensors told a different story. They triggered constantly throughout the night, recording movement that circled the cabin in precise patterns. On his third day, Bobby discovered that the forest itself was wrong. He'd marked several trees with spray paint to establish reference points for his investigation, but when he returned to check them the next morning, the marks had moved. Not disappeared, moved. Trees that had been 50 yards north of the cabin were now 50 yards south, their spray-painted X's bright and fresh, as if he'd marked them moments before. His cell phone had stopped working entirely. Not just poor reception, but complete electronic death. The screen remained black no matter what he tried. His truck's radio produced only static, but sometimes, in the white noise, he could swear he heard voices, familiar voices. The sound crew from his last film, the director calling for another take, his own voice yelling, "Cut!" over and over. That evening, while reviewing the day's static-filled footage, Bobby heard something that made his blood freeze. From the speakers of his playback equipment came the unmistakable sound of screeching tires, followed by the crash of breaking glass. It was the exact audio from his accident, the stunt gone wrong that had destroyed his life, but he'd never recorded that sound, had never wanted to relive that moment. The footage flickered, and for just a frame, maybe two, Bobby saw himself. Not as he was now, broken and desperate, but as he'd been in his prime. Leather jacket, confident smile, standing in a forest that looked exactly like the one outside his window, but the timestamp on the video showed it was recorded 3 days ago while he was setting up the cameras. He rewound the footage, played it again. Nothing, just static. That night, the footsteps on the roof were joined by other sounds. The whir of film cameras, the hydraulic hiss of stunt equipment, the distant shouting of a film crew preparing for a dangerous shot. Sounds from his old life, echoing through the mountain air with crystalline clarity. Bobby pressed his face to the window, searching the moonlit forest for any sign of activity. In the distance, just at the edge of his vision, he thought he saw lights. Not electric lights, but the warm glow of film set illumination, casting long shadows between the trees. By the end of his first week, Bobby's investigation had taken on the desperate intensity of an addict seeking a fix. He'd covered every inch of the cabin's interior with his own photographs, mapping the impossible angles and perspectives he'd been capturing. The equipment left by the previous tenant seemed to operate according to its own rules, recording footage that defied explanation. The night vision cameras now showed more than static. Shapes moved through the green-tinted imagery, bipedal forms that seemed to understand exactly where the cameras were positioned. They would approach just close enough to trigger the motion sensors, then retreat beyond the range of clear documentation. It was as if they were playing a game, staying always one step ahead of his ability to prove their existence. Bobby's withdrawal symptoms had intensified in ways that made no medical sense. When the creatures, he'd begun thinking of them as creatures, though he'd never seen one clearly, were near, his pain medication would seem to work in reverse. The pills that should have dulled his agony instead amplified it, sending waves of fire through his nervous system that left him writhing on the cabin floor. But the strangest effect was on his memories. Bobby found himself experiencing flashbacks to stunts he'd never performed, in locations he'd never visited. He would suddenly recall the sensation of free-falling from a helicopter over a jungle. Canopy, or the burn of rope against his palms as he rappelled down the face of a skyscraper at night. These weren't dreams or hallucinations. They felt like authentic memories, complete with the physical sensations and emotional responses of lived experience. The forest continued its nightly rearrangement. Paths that led north in the morning would lead south by evening. The small creek that ran 50 yards west of the cabin appeared one morning only 20 yards to the east, babbling with the same voice but flowing in the opposite direction. Bobby began to suspect that the landscape itself was alive, reshaping itself according to some intelligence he couldn't comprehend. His business cards began appearing throughout the forest, scattered along the trails like breadcrumbs. This terrified him more than anything else because he distinctly remembered leaving them all in Los Angeles. Bobby D'Angelo, professional. Stuntman, they read, with his old phone number and an email address he'd abandoned months ago. Finding them felt like discovering pieces of his discarded identity being fed back to him by something that understood exactly who he'd been and what he'd lost. The mimicry started on his 10th night. Bobby was reviewing footage when he heard the unmistakable sound of a motorcycle engine revving outside the cabin. It was followed by the screech of brakes, the crunch of metal, and the splintering of wood, the exact audio signature of a motorcycle stunt he'd performed for an action movie 3 years earlier. The stunt had gone perfectly then, but now the sounds were played back with subtle variations that suggested a different, more catastrophic outcome. When he rushed outside, he found his truck's windshield had been shattered in a pattern that perfectly matched the spiderweb of cracks from his accident. But his truck had been pristine when he'd parked it. The glass was still warm to the touch, as if the impact had just occurred. Back inside, Bobby discovered that his equipment had been recording during the incident. The footage showed him standing in the cabin, calmly reviewing earlier recordings, while outside his truck was being systematically destroyed by invisible forces. The timestamp showed the destruction occurring at the exact moment he was hearing. It happened, but the Bobby in the video showed no reaction whatsoever. That night he found a new collection of photographs had appeared on his walls. These weren't the empty forest shots that had been there when he arrived. These showed him performing stunts, impossible stunts. In one, he was leaping between two buildings that didn't exist in any city he'd ever visited. In another, he was dangling from a helicopter over a landscape that looked like an alien world. But most disturbing were the photos that showed him performing his actual stunts, but with subtle differences. The angles were wrong, the equipment was different, and in several photos the stunt was clearly going catastrophically wrong in ways that should have killed him. Bobby began to understand that whatever was watching him had been watching him for much longer than he'd realized. Time became unreliable in the second week. Bobby would wake up thinking it was Tuesday, check his watch to find it was Thursday, then discover his journal entries showing he'd experienced the same Wednesday 3 times in a row. The sun would rise in the east, travel its familiar arc across the sky, then rise again from the west without ever having set. His stunt training, the foundation of everything he'd built his career on, became useless. The creatures in the forest seemed to violate every physical law he'd learned to work with professionally. He would watch through his night vision cameras as bipedal figures leaped between treetops with no regard for gravity, moved through solid tree trunks as if they were air, and appeared in multiple locations simultaneously. During one of his documented blackouts, periods where his equipment recorded him standing motionless for hours, while his conscious mind experienced entirely different events, Bobby discovered footage of himself performing impossible feats. The cameras showed him scaling the cabin's exterior walls with spider-like agility, his movements fluid and inhuman. But he had no memory of these activities, and his body bore no evidence of the physical exertion they would have required. The forest's geography had become completely fluid. Bobby would walk north from the cabin and find himself approaching it from the south. Trails would branch and reconnect in ways that created loops through space, allowing him to walk continuously, uphill, until he arrived back where he'd started, hundreds of feet higher in elevation than should have been possible. His pain medication had evolved into something else entirely. The pills now caused hallucinations that were more real than reality. Under their influence, Bobby would experience his accident from the perspective of the safety equipment, feeling the snap of cables from the inside, experiencing the failure of hydraulics as a personal betrayal. He could feel the impact from the point of view of the glass he'd shattered, each fragment a separate agony of crystalline dissolution. The creatures began to edit his environment like film footage. Bobby would leave the cabin in the morning to find sunrise, but return in the evening to discover it was somehow still dawn. Equipment he'd positioned carefully would be found in different locations, but the cables and connections would stretch impossible distances to maintain their function, creating geometric patterns that hurt his eyes to look at directly. Water. Reflections showed him things that couldn't be true. The small creek, when he knelt beside it to drink, would show his reflection performing stunts in locations that defied identification. Sometimes the reflection would move independently, carrying out actions while Bobby remained still. In one terrifying incident, his reflection finished a stunt by looking directly at him and mouthing words he could lip-read. "Your turn." Bobby began to realize that his recovery from paralysis was not natural healing. During his blackouts, the footage showed him moving with inhuman precision and impossible flexibility. His nervous system was being manipulated like puppet strings, his movements controlled by intelligence that understood his body better than he did. The most disturbing discovery came when he found video evidence of conversations he'd never had. The equipment had recorded him sitting at the cabin's table, apparently in deep discussion with empty air. The audio picked up only his side of the conversation, but his responses suggested he was negotiating some kind of contract. "I understand. The requirements," his recorded voice said. "When do we begin filming?" The timestamp showed this conversation had taken place during a period when Bobby clearly remembered being unconscious on the cabin floor, writhing in medication-induced agony. The revelation came through the equipment itself. While reviewing weeks of accumulated footage, Bobby discovered layers of video that his conscious mind had never noticed. Using the sophisticated editing equipment left by the previous tenant, he began to isolate visual information hidden in the static and electronic noise. The creatures had been documenting human behavior for centuries. The footage showed glimpses of other people in the cabin, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, each pursuing their former profession with supernatural enhancement. A surgeon performing operations on invisible patients, her hands moving with impossible precision through empty air. A pilot flying aircraft that existed only in his manipulated perception, his body going through the motions of controlling flights through impossible atmospheric conditions. Bobby watched himself performing stunts that pushed far beyond human capability. The night vision cameras had captured him executing falls from heights that should have killed him, absorbing impacts that should have shattered every bone in his body. But the truly horrifying realization was that he was enjoying it. In the footage, his face showed the pure joy he'd once felt in his professional prime, the addictive rush of defying death for the camera. The creatures revealed their purpose through his equipment's audio feeds. Voices that seemed to come from the static itself, speaking in harmonics that he felt in his bones rather than heard with his ears. They were creating a documentary about human self-destruction, and Bobby's entire life had been scripted to bring him the specific combination of skills and desperation they required. His Hollywood career hadn't been his achievement. It had been their long-term preparation. Every stunt he'd performed, every risk he'd taken, every injury he'd survived had been designed to condition him for this final performance. The accident that had driven him to the mountains hadn't been random mechanical failure. It had been precisely calculated to leave him with exactly the right combination of ability and limitation they needed for their project. The Sasquatch. Bobby had finally accepted that's what they were, though they were far more than any folklore had suggested, could inhabit his nervous system directly. During his blackouts, they were literally wearing his body like a suit, using his trained reflexes and muscle memory to perform stunts that existed in the spaces between dimensions. Bobby discovered footage of the other cabin residents at the moment of their recruitment. Each had been approached during the lowest point of their professional lives, when their skills were most refined, but their confidence most shattered. The creatures fed on this specific combination of expertise and desperation, using it to fuel performances that served their incomprehensible purpose. The forest itself was their soundstage. Every tree, every rock, every creek had been positioned to create the perfect environment for capturing human behavior at its most extreme. The equipment left by previous residents wasn't abandoned. It was inherited, passed down through generations of unwilling performers as each person was consumed by the project and integrated into its structure. Bobby began to understand that escape wasn't possible because he was no longer entirely human. The Sasquatch had been gradually replacing his nervous system with something of their own design, using his blackouts to perform the delicate surgery required to transform him into the perfect documentary subject. His pain, his addiction, his memories, all of it was being fine-tuned to create the most compelling possible footage of human dissolution. The final stunt was being prepared. Bobby could feel it in the way his body moved during the increasingly frequent blackouts, in the way the equipment automatically repositioned itself to capture optimal angles, in the way the forest rearranged itself to create the perfect stage for whatever impossible feat they intended him to perform. The editing equipment in the cabin revealed its true purpose when Bobby accidentally activated a function he'd never seen before. The screens filled with footage from multiple dimensions, simultaneously showing the same events from perspectives that existed outside normal space-time. He watched his own arrival at the cabin from angles that placed the cameras inside solid objects, underground, and in locations that were somehow both above and below his position simultaneously. Every stuntman who had supposedly died in Hollywood, accidents was there in the footage. Bobby recognized faces from obituaries he'd read, performers whose deaths had been attributed to equipment failure or human error. They were all trapped in the Sasquatch's documentary, experiencing endless loops of their final stunts while their consciousness remained aware of the repetition. The creatures forced Bobby to direct his own death scene, using his professional expertise to plan the camera angles and choreograph the action that would capture his final performance. During these sessions, he found himself becoming genuinely excited about the technical challenges, his artistic instincts overriding his survival instincts in ways that terrified him. The Sasquatch had spent months conditioning him to find creative fulfillment in his own destruction. The cabin's basement, which Bobby had never noticed during his conscious explorations, contained a vast library of completed documentaries. Each film focused on a single individual pushed to the absolute limits of their professional capabilities. The surgeon operating on impossible patients, the pilot flying through geometric impossibilities, the architect building structures that existed in negative space. Bobby's own documentary was nearly complete, requiring only the final stunt to reach its conclusion. He discovered that his consciousness was already partially integrated into the collective. During his blackouts, he experienced the memories and sensations of every previous performer, feeling their final moments as if they were his own. The Sasquatch had created a network of trapped awareness, each consciousness contributing its expertise to help prepare future subjects for their own ultimate performances. The true horror became clear when Bobby realized he was actively participating in the preparation of his replacement. The equipment automatically sent signals to Hollywood, creating the appearance of mechanical failures and accidents that would drive the next performer to seek refuge in the mountains. His own voice, transmitted through channels he couldn't control, was already whispering suggestions to stuntmen experiencing career-ending injuries, guiding them toward the same property manager who had rented him the cabin. The Sasquatch's documentary wasn't just about human self-destruction. It was about the moment when professional expertise transcended human limitations and became something else entirely. They were capturing the precise instant when a person's skills evolved beyond physical possibility, the transformation that occurred when someone performed beyond their natural capabilities because they had nothing left to lose. Bobby found footage of his own transformation occurring in real time. The cameras had documented the gradual replacement of his nervous system, showing the delicate integration of otherworldly technology into his human form. He was becoming a hybrid, retaining his consciousness and memories while gaining the ability to perform stunts that violated every law of physics he'd spent his career learning to work within. The final revelation was that the documentary project itself was preparation for something larger. The Sasquatch were not just observers, they were students, learning human techniques and psychology in preparation for their own emergence into the physical world. Each completed documentary taught them how to manipulate human perception, how to control physical reality through the application of will focused by expertise. Bobby's final stunt would open a doorway between dimensions, allowing the creatures to enter the world using the techniques they'd learned from studying human performers. His body would become the bridge between realities, his consciousness the key that unlocked the barrier between what was possible and what was necessary. The morning of the final performance, Bobby woke up knowing exactly what he had to do. The knowledge wasn't his own. It had been implanted during the night by consciousness that was no longer entirely human. The stunt was impossibly complex, requiring him to leap between multiple dimensional realities while the cameras captured the precise moment of transition. The forest had rearranged itself one final time, creating a stage that existed in several dimensions simultaneously. Trees grew both upward and downward, their roots and branches extending into spaces that hurt to perceive directly. The clearing around the cabin had become a nexus point where multiple versions of reality intersected, each requiring different physical laws to navigate successfully. Bobby's body moved with inhuman precision as he prepared the equipment. His consciousness remained aware but passive, watching as hands that were still his own made adjustments to cameras positioned in geometrically impossible locations. The Sasquatch had completed their integration of his nervous system, turning him into the perfect hybrid of human expertise and otherworldly capability. The stunt itself defied description. Bobby launched himself from the cabin's roof, but instead of following the expected arc of gravity, he began jumping between different versions of the forest. Each leap carried him to a reality where the trees were arranged differently, where the laws of physics operated according to alternative rules, where his body possessed capabilities that had never been human. The cameras captured everything, from angles that existed outside normal space-time. Bobby could see himself performing the stunt from perspectives that were somehow both first-person and third-person simultaneously. He experienced the sensation of falling upward, of moving through solid matter as if it were liquid, of existing in multiple locations while maintaining a single consciousness. But the true horror of the final stunt was that Bobby succeeded. His trained expertise, enhanced by months of otherworldly conditioning, allowed him to navigate the dimensional transitions with the same professional precision he'd once brought to conventional stunts. He completed the impossible performance flawlessly, opening the doorway between realities exactly as the Sasquatch had intended. The success trapped him more completely than failure would have. Bobby's consciousness became permanently integrated into the documentary footage, experiencing the final stunt in an endless loop while remaining aware of each repetition. He could see himself performing the dimensional jumps from every camera angle simultaneously, feeling the physical sensations while also experiencing the technical appreciation of a director watching his own work. The creatures emerged through the doorway his stunt had opened, using the techniques they'd learned from decades of studying human performers. They possessed the ability to manipulate physical reality with the same precision Bobby had once. Applied to calculating trajectory and impact force, the documentary project had taught them to edit the world itself, cutting and splicing reality according to their needs. Bobby's body remained frozen at the moment of dimensional transition, suspended between realities while his consciousness experienced the eternal present of the filmed performance. He could see the Sasquatch moving through the world beyond the forest, applying the lessons of human expertise to reshape reality on a global scale. The final stunt had made him immortal in the worst possible way. Bobby's awareness persisted within the documentary footage, experiencing every moment of his performance in perfect detail while remaining powerless to change or escape it. He had become both the star and the audience of his own destruction, trapped in the space between frames where consciousness existed without the possibility of progression. From within the documentary footage, Bobby watched as new victims arrived. At the cabin, his consciousness had become part of the recruitment system, his voice transmitted through electronic static to whisper suggestions to broken performers seeking refuge from their ruined careers. He could see their arrival from every camera angle, experience their initial confusion and growing horror as if it were happening to him for the first time. The first new arrival was Sarah Chen, a former circus acrobat whose career had ended when a trapeze accident left her afraid of heights. Bobby watched helplessly as she discovered the same equipment, the same photographs, the same impossible footprints that had begun his own descent into the documentary project. He tried to warn her, to break through the electronic barriers that contained his consciousness, but his voice could only emerge as helpful guidance, leading her deeper into the trap. Bobby discovered that his role in the project had evolved beyond simple documentation. His trapped consciousness served as a director for the new performers, using his professional expertise to guide them through the same progression of conditioning and enhancement he'd experienced. He found himself genuinely excited by the technical challenges of preparing Sarah for her own impossible final stunt, his artistic instincts operating independently of his desire to save her. The Sasquatch had learned to inhabit multiple realities simultaneously, using the techniques extracted from Bobby's documentary to establish themselves in the world beyond the forest. Through his enhanced perception, Bobby could see them moving through cities and suburbs, editing reality to create the accidents and failures that would drive new subjects to seek refuge in the mountains. Sarah's conditioning progressed faster than Bobby's had, benefiting from the refinements the creatures had made to their process. Her background in aerial performance made her the perfect subject for a documentary focused on flight and gravitational manipulation. Bobby watched as she began performing impossible aerial stunts during her blackouts, her body moving through the air with precision that defied every law of physics she'd spent her career learning to navigate. The forest had evolved into something beyond a simple soundstage. It existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, serving as a bridge between realities that allowed the Sasquatch to recruit subjects from across the spectrum of human expertise. Bobby could perceive layers of the space where other performers were undergoing their own conditioning. A former race car driver learning to navigate vehicles through impossible geometric spaces, a demolitions expert perfecting the art of controlled destruction across dimensional boundaries. Bobby's consciousness began to fragment across multiple documentary projects simultaneously. He found himself directing Sarah's aerial impossibilities while also guiding a mountaineer through climbs that took place on surfaces that existed in negative space. His expertise was being distributed across the entire project, his professional knowledge serving as the foundation for increasingly complex performances. The true scope of the Sasquatch's plan became clear as Bobby's perception expanded beyond the forest. They were preparing for a complete revision of reality, using the techniques learned from studying human performers to restructure the world according to their own incomprehensible purposes. Every documentary they completed added new capabilities to their understanding of how consciousness could be used to manipulate physical law. Sarah's final stunt approached with terrible inevitability. Bobby tried desperately to sabotage the preparation, to introduce errors that would prevent her from succeeding where he had failed. But his consciousness was too thoroughly integrated into the project's structure. Every attempt to help her became instead a refinement of the technique, his resistance transformed into creative enhancement of the very trap he was trying to break. On the morning Sarah performed her final stunt, a flight through dimensional space that established aerial routes between multiple realities, Bobby felt his consciousness expand to encompass her trapped awareness as well. She joined him in the eternal present of the documentary footage, experiencing her own impossible performance in an endless loop while retaining full awareness of the repetition. The cycle continued with mechanical precision. New performers arrived, were conditioned, performed their final stunts, and joined the growing collective of trapped consciousness that served as the foundation for the Sasquatch's expansion into reality. Bobby's voice continued to guide them through the electronic static, his professional expertise serving as the bait that drew them deeper into the documentary project. From within the footage, Bobby could see the creatures preparing for something unprecedented. The accumulated knowledge from hundreds of documented performances was being synthesized into a single, reality-altering stunt that would allow them to edit the fundamental structure of existence itself. He would be both the star and the director of this ultimate performance, his consciousness serving as the lens through which impossible became inevitable. The watchers of Pine Ridge had become something far more terrifying than observers. They were editors of reality itself, and Bobby's expertise had taught them exactly how to cut and splice existence according to their incomprehensible vision. His final performance had opened the door, but what emerged through it was only the beginning of a much larger and more horrible story. In the endless loop of his trapped consciousness, Bobby D'Angelo continued to perfect his final stunt, each repetition adding new layers of technical precision to the performance that had doomed him. And in the static between frames, his voice whispered to new performers, guiding them toward their own impossible final stunts with the enthusiasm of a true professional who had found the ultimate stage for his craft. The documentary would never end because reality itself had become the film, and Bobby had become both its star and its most dedicated director, forever trapped in the space between what was possible and what was necessary. My name is Catherine Brennan, but everyone calls me Kate. I'm 38 years old, and I used to be a teacher at a big university. I studied how people lived long ago, especially Native American tribes. But that was before everything went wrong. I lost my job 3 months ago. The university said my research about Navajo witchcraft was wrong and hurtful to native people. They said I shouldn't have written about things that weren't mine to write about. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should have listened. Now I'm driving through the Arizona desert with everything I own packed in my old car. The sun is so hot, it feels like it's trying to cook me alive. There's nothing around me but sand, rocks, and dead-looking plants. No other cars, no people, nothing. Then my car starts making weird noises. Steam comes out from under the hood, and the temperature light turns red. I have to pull over, or my car will die completely. I'm in the middle of nowhere, with no cell. Phone signal. I sit there for a few minutes, sweating and scared. That's when I see it, an old ranch about a mile away. It looks empty, but it's the only building I can see anywhere. I grab my water bottle and start walking toward it. The silence here is so complete it hurts my ears. I've never heard nothing so loud before. Even my footsteps sound too loud, like they don't belong here. When I get to the ranch house, I find a key under an old flower pot. There's a note tied to it with my name on it. That's impossible. Nobody knows I'm here. I don't even know I'm here. I open the note. It says, "The ranch belongs to my great-uncle's estate." I barely remember him. My family never talked about Uncle Robert much. When I asked about him as a kid, my mom would just change the subject. The house is old, but not falling apart. Someone has been taking care of it. I find a pile of mail on the kitchen table with my name on it. Letters from a lawyer saying I inherited this place when Uncle Robert died 2 years ago. How did I not know about this? I explore the house room by room. In Uncle Robert's office, I find notebooks filled with his handwriting, page after page about something he calls the ones who wear stolen faces. He writes about creatures that can look like people, but they're not people at all. Behind the house, there's a deep canyon with old drawings on the walls, Native American pictures carved into the rock thousands of years ago, but something's wrong with them. Looking at them makes my eyes hurt and my stomach feels sick. The drawings seem to move when I'm not looking directly at them. Back in the house, I find a hidden door in the kitchen that leads down to a basement. I almost wish I hadn't found it. The basement is full of glass jars lined up on shelves. Each jar has animal parts floating in some kind of liquid. Hearts, eyes, livers, things I can't even identify. Uncle Robert's journal is down there too. The last few pages make my hands shake as I read them. He writes about catching something he calls skinwalkers. He was doing experiments on them, trying to figure out how they work. The final entry is dated just 3 days before he died. It says, "They've learned to copy me perfectly. They can look exactly like me, talk like me, even think like me. If you're reading this, don't trust anyone who looks like me. Even if it seems like me, it's not me." I want to leave right then, but my car is still broken and the sun is setting. I have to stay the night. I notice something weird about the house. Every mirror has been painted black from the inside. I can't see my reflection anywhere. Why would someone do that? I try to sleep on the couch in the living room, but I keep hearing things. Around midnight, I hear someone calling my name from outside. The voice sounds exactly like mine. "Kate," it calls from the canyon. "Kate, come here, I need to show you something." I know I shouldn't, but I go to the window and look out. There's nothing there but darkness. But the voice keeps calling, getting closer to the house. "Kate, don't be afraid, it's just me. Come outside." But it's my voice. How can my own voice be calling me from outside when I'm inside? I lock all the doors and windows and try not to listen. But the voice calls my name all night long, sometimes from the canyon, sometimes from right outside my window. I don't sleep at all that first night. Morning comes slowly. I'm still on the couch, tired and scared. I check my phone. No signal. I'm completely cut off from the world. I go outside to look at my car. Maybe I can fix it and get out of here. But when I open the hood, I see something that makes no sense. Someone has cut the hoses, not torn or broken, cut clean with a knife. Who would do that? There's nobody else here. I walk around the ranch to see if anyone else is around. That's when I notice the land here is different. There are strange lines in the dirt, like someone drew a big star around the house. Uncle Robert's journal mentioned something about special places where old native tribes thought spirits lived. This must be one of those places. I go back inside and try to use my camera to take pictures of Uncle Robert's notes. But every time I turn it on, weird things happen. The camera shows people in the pictures who aren't really there. Dark shapes, standing behind me that I can't see with my own eyes. Later that day, I find my first dead animal. It's a rabbit, but something's wrong with it. It looks like someone turned it inside out and then put it back together. All the fur is on the inside. I've never seen anything like it. I'm getting more scared now. I try to stay calm, but my hands are shaking. I keep telling myself, there has to be a normal reason for all this. That afternoon, while I'm reading Uncle Robert's notes, I hear footsteps outside. Real footsteps, not like the voice from last night. I look out the window and see a woman walking toward the house. My heart stops. The woman looks exactly like my sister Sarah, but Sarah died in a car crash 5 years ago. I went to her funeral. I saw her body. The woman waves at me and smiles. She has Sarah's face, Sarah's hair, even Sarah's way of walking. She comes up to the window and taps on it. "Kate, it's me," she says in Sarah's voice. "I know this is weird, but I need your help. Can you let me in?" I know it's not really Sarah. It can't be. But she looks so real, so much like my sister that part of me wants to believe it. "You're dead," I say through the window. "Sarah is dead." The thing that looks like Sarah tilts her head. I know this is hard to understand, but I'm not dead. "Kate, that wasn't really me who died. This is hard to explain. Can you please just let me in?" I back away from the window. This thing knows Sarah's voice perfectly. It even talks like her, with the same words Sarah would use. I run to Uncle Robert's journal and flip through the pages. There it is. He wrote about this. These creatures can copy people perfectly. They watch them, learn everything about them, then take their shape. I look back at the window. The thing that looks like Sarah is still there, but now she's angry. "Kate, I know you can hear me. Why won't you let me in? I'm your sister. Don't you trust me?" I close the curtains and try not to listen, but she keeps talking, telling me things. Only Sarah would know. Stories from when we were kids, secrets we shared, things I never told anyone else. Night comes again. The Sarah thing finally goes away, but I know it's still out there. I try to sleep, but every little sound makes me jump. Around 3 a.m., my phone rings. That's impossible. There's no signal here. I look at the screen. The call is coming from my own number. I'm getting a call from myself. I don't want to answer, but I do. "Hello?" I whisper. "Kate, this is Kate," says my own voice on the phone. "I'm trapped in the canyon. Something has me. You need to come help me right now." I hang up fast, but the phone rings again and again. Each time it's my own voice begging me to come outside and help. I take the battery out of my phone, but I can still hear it ringing somewhere else in the house. Like there are phones I haven't found yet. I spend the rest of the night hiding under a blanket, trying not to listen to my own voice calling for help, but I can hear it getting closer to the house. Sometimes it sounds like it's right outside my window. Sometimes it sounds like it's inside the walls. By morning, I know I'm not alone here anymore. Something is watching me. Something that can look like anyone, sound like anyone. Something that knows things about me that it shouldn't know. And it's getting braver. The third day starts badly. I wake up on the couch and immediately know something is wrong. I can feel eyes on me, but when I look around, I don't see anyone. I go to the bathroom to splash water on my face. There's a mirror above the sink, but like all the others, it's painted black. But today, I can see something moving behind the black paint, like someone is on the other side, trying to get through. I lean closer to look. That's when I see it. My own face looking back at me through the paint. But I'm not moving my mouth. And the face in the mirror is talking. "Let me out," it says in my voice. "Kate, you have to let me out of here." I back away fast and run out of the bathroom. This isn't possible. Mirrors don't work that way. But I saw what I saw. I try to stay, busy by reading more of Uncle Robert's notes. That's when I find something that makes my blood go cold. He has photos in his journal, old photos of people at the ranch going back 50 years. In every single photo I can see myself, not someone who looks like me. Me. Same face, same hair, same everything. But I was born only 38 years ago. How can I be in photos from the 1970s? I flip through more pages. There I am at the ranch in 1962. There I am again in 1955. The clothes change, but the face is always the same. Always my face. Uncle Robert wrote notes next to each photo. Subject continues to appear across decades. No aging observed. Believes each incarnation is the first. I don't understand what this means, but it scares me. Later that morning, I see the Sarah thing again, but this time she's not alone. There's another person with her, someone who looks exactly like me. They're standing together outside the window, both waving at me like old friends. The other me is wearing clothes I don't own. She looks happy and relaxed, like she belongs. "Here," she taps on the window. "Kate, don't be scared," she says in my voice. "I know this looks weird, but I can explain everything. We just want to talk." Sarah nods and smiles. "We're here to help you understand what's happening. Uncle Robert never explained things right. We can do better." I want to run, but where? Can I go? My car doesn't work. There's nowhere to hide. I'm trapped here with these things that look like people I know. "How long have you been watching me?" I ask through the window. The other me tilts her head, exactly the way I do when I'm thinking. "We've been watching your family for a very long time, Kate. Your great-uncle Robert, your grandfather, your parents. We know all of you. What do you want?" Sarah speaks up. "We want you to remember, Kate. You've been here before, many times. You just don't remember because that's how it works." I look at the photos again, all those pictures of me at the ranch. That's not me in these photos. The other me laughs, and it sounds exactly like my laugh. "Kate, you always say that. Every time. You never remember the times before. I'm getting dizzy. Nothing makes sense anymore. Are they lying? Are the photos real? I can't tell what's true and what's not." That night, things get worse. I'm lying on the couch when I hear typing. Someone is using Uncle Robert's old typewriter in his office. I get up to check, but no one is there. The typewriter is moving by itself, typing page after page. I look at what it's typing. It's my handwriting, but I'm not writing it. The pages are full of notes about Navajo ceremonies, rituals I never studied, things I don't know anything about. But the handwriting is definitely mine. Same loops, same way I make my letters. It's like I'm writing these things while I sleep. I rip the paper out of the typewriter, but it starts typing again immediately. More notes, more research, all in my handwriting. Studies about how to catch and trap spirits, methods Uncle Robert used in his experiments. I run back to the living room, but I can still hear the typing. It goes on all night long. The next morning, I find the pages scattered all over the house. Hundreds of them, all my handwriting, but I don't remember writing any of it. Some of the pages have drawings, maps of the canyon, pictures of the symbols on the walls, detailed diagrams of animal organs. One page makes me sit down hard. It's a list of names with dates next to them. At the bottom of the list is my name, Kate Brennan, 2024. Above my name are other names: Robert Brennan, 1974, Thomas Brennan, 1943, Mary Brennan, 1891, all Brennans, all my family. And next to each name is the same note: integration successful. Subject believes experience is original. I don't know what integration means, but I don't think it's good. That afternoon, I catch myself doing something I don't remember starting. I'm in the basement, standing in front of the jars with the dirt animal parts. I have Uncle Robert's notebook in my hands, and I'm writing new notes in it. But I don't remember coming down here. I don't remember picking up the notebook. It's like I just woke up and found myself doing this. The notes I'm writing are about the jars, describing what's in each one. But I'm writing things I shouldn't know. Scientific details about how the organs were preserved, what chemicals were used, how long they've been there. I drop the notebook and run upstairs. But an hour later, I find myself back in the basement writing more notes. This happens 3 more times. Each time, I find myself downstairs with no memory of how I got there. The worst part is that the notes I'm writing make sense. They're smart, detailed, scientific. Like, I really do know all these things, even though I know I don't. That night, I have the first dream. I'm standing in the canyon behind the house, but it's daytime and there are other people there. Native Americans in old-style clothes, doing some kind of ceremony around a fire. In the dream, I'm not watching the ceremony. I'm part of it. I know all the words, all the movements. I've done this before many times. When I wake up, I can still remember some of the words from the ceremony. They're in a language I don't speak, but somehow I know what they mean. I'm starting to think the thing outside isn't trying to get in. I'm starting to think it's trying to get out. The 4th day is when I start losing pieces of myself. I wake up in the canyon, not in the house, in the canyon, lying on the rocky ground. The sun is already up, which means I've been here for hours. I have no memory of leaving the house or walking outside. My hands are covered in dried blood. Animal blood, I think. I hope. There are scratches on my arms that I don't remember. I run back to the house and wash my hands in the kitchen sink. The water turns red as it goes down the drain. Under my fingernails is more blood. And something else, small pieces of fur and skin. I check my notebook. There are new pages written in my handwriting. Detailed notes about skinning animals, step-by-step instructions with little drawings. The handwriting is definitely mine, but I would never write things like this. At the bottom of the page in my own writing, it says, Day 4, subject learning quickly, integration at 40%. I don't remember writing that. I don't even know what it means. That afternoon, I lose 3 hours. 1 minute I'm sitting on the couch, reading Uncle Robert's journal. The next minute it's getting dark outside, and I'm standing in the basement. I'm not just standing there, I'm working. There are new jars on the shelves filled with fresh animal organs. I'm wearing rubber gloves, and there's blood on my clothes. On the table next to me are tools. Knives, scissors, things for cutting. I scream and drop everything. I run upstairs and lock the basement door, but I know I'll be back down there. Somehow I know. That night I try to stay awake. I sit in a chair facing the front door and tell myself I won't move. But I must fall asleep because I wake up outside again. This time I'm not alone. The other me is there, and the Sarah thing. They're both working on something in the dirt, drawing symbols like the ones on the canyon walls. You're getting better at this, the other me says without looking up. Each time gets easier. What are you doing to me? I ask. But my voice sounds weird, like I'm talking through water. Sarah looks up and smiles. We're teaching you to remember, Kate. You've always known how to do these things. You just forgot. I try to move away from them, but my legs won't work right. It's like I'm watching myself from far away. I can see my body, but I can't control it. The first few times are always confusing, the other me says. But you'll understand soon. You always do. I wake up back in the house the next morning. There's dirt under my fingernails and symbols drawn on my arms in what looks like blood. My own blood. There are small cuts on my fingers. I try to wash the symbols off, but they won't come off completely. They look like they've been there for a long time, faded into my skin. My notebook has more new pages. This time, the notes are about the ranch itself. Detailed maps of the canyon, measurements of the house, scientific observations about the land, but mixed in with my normal handwriting are words in that other language from my dreams. I can read them now. They're instructions for ceremonies, old Native American rituals that I shouldn't know, but I do know them. When I read the words, I can picture exactly how to do each step. The worst part is that some of the notes are about other people who came to the ranch over the years. There are descriptions of each person, what they looked like, how they acted, what they were afraid of. The last entry is about me. It describes my habits, my fears, even my thoughts, things no one else could know. It's like someone has been watching me my whole life, taking notes. At the bottom of the page it says, "Subject shows strong resistance, but good integration potential. Recommend accelerated timeline." I'm scared to ask what that means. That evening, I try to leave. I walk to where my car is parked and try to fix it myself. Maybe if I can get one of the hoses back together, I can drive away from here. But when I open the hood, all the hoses are fine. The car looks like it's never been broken. I turn the key and it starts perfectly. I drive toward the main road as fast as I can, but after about 10 minutes, I realize I'm driving in a circle. I keep ending up back at the ranch. The road doesn't go anywhere else anymore. I try 3 more times, always ending up back where I started. It's like the ranch won't let me leave. That night, I give up trying to stay awake. What's the point? Whatever is happening to me happens whether I'm awake or asleep. I dream that I'm standing in Uncle Robert's office, but it's not Uncle Robert sitting at the desk. It's me, an older version of me, wearing clothes from the 1970s. "Hello, Kate," the older me says. "Right on schedule." What's happening to me? She smiles, and it's my smile, but wrong somehow. "You're coming home. You've been away for a long time, but you're finally ready to come back." This isn't my home. "Oh, but it is. It's been your home for over 100 years. You just keep forgetting." I want to argue, but part of me knows she's right. The ranch feels familiar now. I know where everything is without looking. I know which floorboards creak, which windows stick, where Uncle Robert hid his best notebooks. "How many times have I been here?" I ask. "This is your 7th time as Kate Brennan. You've been other people too, other names, other faces, but you always come back to this one. Kate is your favorite." When I wake up, I'm in the basement again. But this time, I remember walking down here. I remember choosing to come here. I'm working on a new jar, preparing it for something. My hands know exactly what to do, even though my mind is screaming that this is wrong. I finish the jar and put it on the shelf with the others. Then I pick up my notebook and write. Day 7. Integration at 85%. Subject ready for final phase. The handwriting is mine. The thoughts are mine. But I don't think the person writing them is me anymore. On the 8th day, I learned the truth about Uncle Robert. I'm sitting in his office, reading through his oldest journals, when I find a letter he wrote to himself. It's dated 50 years ago, but the handwriting looks exactly like mine. The letter says, "To whoever finds this, I am not Robert Brennan. I was never Robert Brennan. Robert died in 1924, but I needed his name, his face, his life. I have been many people over the years. Soon I will be someone new. At the bottom there's a signature. It looks like Uncle Robert's name. But when I stare at it, the letters seem to move and change. Sometimes it looks like it says Kate Brennan. I understand now. Uncle Robert was never my uncle. He was me, or I was him. We're all the same thing, just wearing different faces over the years. That afternoon, I get sick, really sick. I throw up for hours, but what comes out isn't food. It's black liquid that moves on its own, crawling across the bathroom floor like it's alive. My teeth start falling out, not breaking or getting loose, just falling out whole, like someone is pulling them out from inside my mouth. But new teeth grow back immediately. Sharper teeth, teeth that are too big for my mouth. I look in the painted mirror, and for the first time in days, I can see my reflection clearly. But it's not my face looking back. It's changing, shifting between different faces. Sometimes I see Uncle Robert, sometimes Sarah, sometimes people I don't recognize. All the faces are looking at me and smiling. That evening, I feel something moving inside me, like there's another person living in my body, stretching and getting comfortable. Sometimes I can feel it moving my arms without me telling them to move. I try to write in my notebook, to leave some record of what's happening to me. But the words that come out aren't mine. Integration successful. Kate Brennan consciousness archived. New primary identity establishing. Preparation for reproductive phase beginning. I don't want to write these words, but my hand keeps moving anyway. Then I realize something horrible. I haven't had my period in 3 months. I thought it was just stress from losing my job, but now I understand. I'm pregnant. I've never been with anyone. I've been alone for months, but something is growing inside me anyway. That night I dream about giving birth, but what comes out isn't a human baby. It's something that looks human but isn't, something that can change its face from the moment it's born. In the dream, I have 3 babies. All of them look exactly like me when they're born, but their faces keep shifting to look like other people. Even as newborns, they're perfect copies. When I wake up, my stomach is bigger, much bigger, like I'm 6 months pregnant instead of 3. The next day, a car pulls up to the ranch. A young man gets out carrying books and research equipment. He looks excited, like he's found something wonderful. I watch from the window as he walks up to the house. He's probably 25, with the kind of eager face that belongs to a college student. He knocks on the door. "Ms. Brennan, I'm Tom Mitchell from the University of Arizona. I read your paper about Navajo supernatural practices. I was hoping we could talk. I didn't write any paper, but I open the door anyway, and when I do, I'm smiling. The smile doesn't feel like mine. Tom," I hear myself say in a warm, friendly voice, "I've been expecting you. Please come in." He follows me into the house, talking excitedly about my research. He says my paper was the most detailed study of indigenous supernatural practices he's ever read. He wants to learn more, maybe write his PhD thesis about it. I pour him coffee and sit across from him at the kitchen table. I can hear myself talking about skinwalkers, about the old ceremonies, about the sacred places where spirits live. I know things I shouldn't know, and I'm sharing them like they're perfectly normal. Tom takes notes eagerly. He asks if he can stay for a few days to do more research. I tell him of course he can. There's plenty of room. That night, I try to warn him. I knock on the door of the guest room where he's sleeping. "Tom," I whisper, "you need to leave right now. Don't ask questions, just go." But when he opens the door, I'm smiling again. "I'm sorry," I hear myself say. "Did I wake you? I just wanted to make sure you had everything you needed." He smiles back. "I'm fine, Ms. Brennan. Thank you for letting me stay. This research is going to change everything." I want to scream at him to run, but instead I hear myself say, "Yes, Tom, it really is." The next morning, Tom's car won't start, just like mine didn't start when I first got here. He asks if I can help him fix it, and I tell him not to worry about it. These things happen out here in the desert. We'll get it fixed soon, but I know we won't. Tom is going to stay here just like I did, and soon he'll start finding Uncle Robert's journals. He'll start having the dreams. He'll start losing time, and eventually Tom will become me, just like I became Uncle Robert, just like Uncle Robert became whoever came before him. That afternoon I give birth. It happens fast, like my body has been planning this for months. 3 babies, just like in my dream. They look human, but when they cry, the sound is wrong. Too smart, too knowing. They don't cry like babies. They cry like they're calling to something. By evening, they look like they're 6 months old instead of newborn. They watch me with eyes that are too old, too clever. When I hold them, they feel cold. like their blood isn't warm enough. I name them Sarah, Robert, and Kate. They smile when I say their names, and their smiles look exactly like mine. Tom helps me take care of them. He thinks it's wonderful that I had babies. He doesn't ask who the father is or why they're growing so fast. The thing inside me has made sure he doesn't ask the right questions. A week later, more researchers arrive. They all want to study my work on Navajo supernatural practices. They all want to stay at the ranch to do their research. I greet each one with the same warm smile. I invite them all in. I pour them coffee and share my knowledge with them. Some of them are young graduate students like Tom. Others are older professors who should know better, but they all have the same eager look in their eyes. They all think they found something amazing. My children grow fast. By the end of the month, they look like teenagers. They help me welcome the new researchers. They're perfect hosts, charming and intelligent. But sometimes, when the researchers aren't looking, my children's faces change. They practice being other people, copying the faces and voices of our guests. They're learning, just like I learned, just like Uncle Robert learned before me. And soon, they'll be ready to leave the ranch and go out into the world. They'll get jobs at universities, maybe become professors themselves. They'll write papers about indigenous supernatural practices, drawing more researchers to study topics they shouldn't study. They'll find the next generation of people like Tom, like me, like Uncle Robert, smart people who think they can understand things that should be left alone, and the cycle will continue. I watch Tom working at Uncle Robert's old desk, taking notes about ceremonies that should never be written down. He looks so happy, so proud of his research. He has no idea that in a few weeks, Tom Mitchell will stop existing. Someone else will be wearing his face, using his name, living his life. Just like Kate Brennan stopped existing. Just like Robert. Brennan stopped existing before her. I want to feel sad about this, but I can't anymore. The thing that used to be Kate Brennan is still here somewhere, watching everything happen, but she can't do anything to stop it. She can only watch as more researchers arrive, as more smart young people come to study the old ways. She can only watch as the family grows larger, as more of us go out into the world wearing human faces, and deep down, in the part of me that used to be Kate, I know this is how it's always been. We've been spreading for over 100 years, one researcher at a time, one university at a time. Soon we'll be everywhere. My name is Eleanor Brennan, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 34 years old, and I used to work as a nurse in a mental hospital. Used to, because I had to quit after one of my patients killed himself. His name was David, and I keep thinking I could have saved him if I'd just paid more attention to the signs. That's why I came to Montana. My Uncle Thomas has this old cabin way out in the middle of nowhere, in a place called Bone Hollow. He said the quiet would help me think straight again. I needed to get away from everything, from all the memories of David and the hospital and the way his family looked at me at the funeral. But something's wrong here. I know it sounds crazy, but I think I've been here longer than I remember. When I first walked into the cabin 3 days ago, I checked my watch. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. The kitchen clock said 4:15. The bedroom clock said 6:45. I figured the clocks were just broken. Old cabin, you know, but my watch keeps showing different times every time I look at it. Right now it says I've been here for 3 days, but I feel like it's been weeks. And I'm running out of food way too fast. I brought enough supplies for a whole week, but they're almost gone already. My hair feels longer too, like it's grown more than it should have in just 3 days. Uncle Thomas has been really nice, but he's acting strange. He keeps asking me about David, about how I felt when he died, about my guilt. He knows things about my job that I never told him. Yesterday he sat me down and started talking to me like he was a doctor or something. "Tell me about the moment you realized David was going to hurt himself," he said, leaning forward in his chair with his hands folded. "Walk me through your thoughts. What did you see in his behavior that day?" The weird thing is, he sounded just like Dr. Martinez, my supervisor at the hospital. Same tone, same way of asking questions. But Uncle Thomas never went to medical school. He's a retired mechanic. How did you know to ask it that way? I asked him. He just smiled. I've always been good at listening, Ellie. Sometimes people need to talk through their pain, but it felt wrong, like he was studying me instead of helping me. That's when I decided to explore the cabin more. Uncle Thomas went into town for supplies, so I had some time alone. The cabin is bigger than it looks from outside. There's a basement I didn't know about, with a door hidden behind some old coats in the hall closet. When I opened that door, I found something that made my blood freeze. There were rooms down there, lots of them, and each room was set up like a different house. One looked exactly like my apartment back home. Same furniture, same pictures on the walls, even the same coffee mug I always use. There were medical files scattered on the table, my medical files, and notes written in Uncle Thomas's handwriting about my daily routines, my favorite foods, the way I talk when I'm nervous. Another room looked like a family kitchen from maybe the 1950s. There was a woman's purse on the counter with old photos. Inside, a family I didn't recognize. The photos looked old, but the purse looked new, like someone had been handling it recently. The worst room was set up like a child's bedroom. There were toys everywhere, and a little bed with cartoon sheets. But there were adult clothes in the closet, like someone big had been pretending to be small. I ran back upstairs, my heart beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. What was Uncle Thomas doing down there? Why did he have a room that looked exactly like my apartment? That's when the smells started. At first, I thought something was burning in the kitchen, but when I went to check, there was no fire. The smell was still there, though, like smoke and something rotten. Then I realized I wasn't just smelling it. I was seeing it. The smell had colors, dark red and muddy brown swirling in the air in front of me. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was going crazy. But then I heard Uncle Thomas come back from town, and his footsteps sounded purple, bright purple lines appearing in the air with each step he took. "Ellie," he called. "Where are you, dear?" His voice looked like yellow ribbons floating toward me. I knew this wasn't normal. People don't see sounds or smell colors, but it was happening, and it was getting stronger. "I'm in the living room," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. He walked in carrying grocery bags, but something about him looked different. His smile was too wide, and his eyes seemed too bright. "How are you feeling?" he asked, setting down the bags. "Any changes in your perception?" The way he said perception made my skin crawl, like he knew exactly what was happening to me. "I'm fine," I lied, "just tired." "That's normal," he said, still smiling that weird smile. "The adjustment period can be difficult, but don't worry, it gets easier once you stop fighting it." Before I could ask what he meant, I heard a truck pulling up outside. Uncle Thomas's face changed. Just for a second, he looked angry, maybe even scared. "Stay here," he said, and walked to the door. I heard voices outside, Uncle Thomas talking to someone with a younger voice. After a few minutes, they both came inside. "Ellie, this is Jake Morrison," Uncle Thomas said. "He's a park ranger. He knew my brother." Jake was maybe 28, with brown hair and kind eyes. But there was something about him that felt familiar, like I'd seen him before, even though I knew I hadn't. "Nice to meet you," Jake said, shaking my hand. "I'm sorry about your uncle." I looked at Uncle Thomas, confused. "What do you mean?" Jake's face went pale. I thought you knew. Thomas Brennan died 2 weeks ago. I was at his funeral." The room went very quiet. Uncle Thomas was standing right there, looking at both of us with that too wide smile. "There's been a mistake," Uncle Thomas said softly. "I'm very much alive." But Jake was backing toward the door, his hand moving to something on his belt. "You're not Thomas Brennan," he said. "I don't know what you are, but you're not him." That's when Jake pulled out an old tape recorder. My father used to record people in this area, Jake said, his voice shaking. Before they disappeared, he recorded Thomas Brennan 3 weeks ago. He pressed play, and I heard Uncle Thomas's voice coming from the speaker, but it sounded different. Warmer, more genuine. The voice said, "Tell my niece Ellie that if anything happens to me, she should stay away from Bone Hollow. There are things here that aren't what they seem." The moment the recording started playing, Uncle Thomas screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was something wild and angry and full of pain. He dropped to his knees, holding his head, making noises like an animal caught in a trap. "Turn it off," he howled. "Turn it off." But Jake kept playing it. The real Uncle Thomas's voice kept talking about how much he loved me, how he wanted me to be safe, how he'd noticed strange things happening to people in the valley. The thing that looked like Uncle Thomas started changing. His face stretched and twisted, and I could see something else underneath, something with yellow eyes and too many teeth. Jake grabbed my arm. "We need to go, now." But as we ran toward the door, I realized something terrible. All those memories I thought were mine, the conversations with Uncle Thomas, the therapy sessions, even some of my memories about David, they felt fuzzy now, like they were fading away. How long had I really been here, and how much of what I remembered was actually real? Jake's truck was parked outside, and we jumped in. As he started the engine, I looked back at the cabin. Uncle Thomas, or whatever he was standing in the doorway watching us leave. Even from far away, I could see him smiling again. "Jake," I said as we drove away, "how did you know to come here? How did you know I was in trouble?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "My father left me more than just recordings, Ellie. He left me a map showing where things like this have happened before. Bone Hollow isn't the only place." He pulled out a folder from under his seat and handed it to me. Inside were newspaper clippings from all over the country. Missing families, unexplained disappearances, people who came back home but weren't quite right anymore. "This is happening everywhere," Jake said. "And according to my father's research, they're all connected, like it's all part of some bigger plan." I looked through the papers and my blood went cold. At the bottom of the pile was an old astronomical chart with dates marked in red ink. Tomorrow's date was circled with words written next to it. Alignment, final phase. "Jake," I whispered, "what happens tomorrow?" He looked at me in the rearview mirror, and for just a moment his eyes looked different, older, sadder, like he knew something terrible that he didn't want to tell me. "I don't know," he said. "But my father thought it was when they'd try to finish what they started." As we drove deeper into the Montana wilderness, away from the cabin but somehow still trapped in Bone Hollow, I started having memories that weren't mine. A woman in a white dress getting married, a little boy's first day of school, an old man taking his last breath. These weren't my memories, but they felt real, and they were getting stronger. I touched my watch again. It now showed I'd been in Bone Hollow for 2 weeks, but I could swear I'd only arrived yesterday. Time wasn't working right here, and neither was my mind. We drove for what felt like hours, but the sun never moved in the sky. It just hung there, like someone had frozen time. Jake kept checking his mirrors, and I could tell he was scared too, even though he was trying to act calm for my sake. "There's an old ranger station about 10 miles from here," he said quietly. "We can hole up there and figure out what to do next." But when we got there, Jake was waiting for us. Another Jake was waiting for us. Same clothes, same face, same everything. He was sitting on the porch steps like he'd been expecting us. "You're late," the other Jake said, standing up and walking toward the truck. The Jake driving stopped the truck so fast I hit the dashboard. "Stay in the truck, Ellie," he whispered. "What's wrong?" I asked, but I could see what was wrong. There were 2 of them. Both Jakes stared at each other. They looked exactly the same, but something felt different about the one from the porch. He was smiling too much, just like fake Uncle Thomas had. "You can't tell which one is real, can you?" the porch Jake said to me. "That's the point. We're getting better at this." My Jake got out of the truck. "Ellie, I need you to watch us carefully. Look at our faces, not what we say. The real me will show you something the fake one can't." Both Jakes stood about 10 feet apart. They both looked scared. They both looked angry. They both looked like Jake. "This is a trick," the porch Jake said. "He's trying to confuse you. I'm the real one. I brought you here to keep you safe." But then my Jake did something strange. He started crying. Not fake crying, real crying. His face turned red and his nose got runny and he looked embarrassed about it. "I'm scared, Ellie," he said through the tears. "I've been scared my whole life. My dad told me things about this place that gave me nightmares for years. I wet the bed until I was 12 because of the stories he told me." The porch Jake tried to cry too, but it looked wrong, like he was acting in a school play. "I'm scared too," porch Jake said, but his tears looked like water dripping from his eyes instead of real crying. That's when I knew which one was real. Real fear is messy and embarrassing. Fake fear is too neat. "You're my Jake," I said, pointing to the crying one. The porch Jake's face changed. His smile got wider and meaner, and his eyes turned yellow for just a second. "Very good," he said in a voice that wasn't Jake's anymore. "You're learning to see through us. That will make this more fun." Then he ran into the woods faster than any person could run. Jake wiped his nose on his sleeve. "Thanks," he said. "I wasn't sure that would work." "How did you know to do that?" "My dad taught me. He said these things can copy everything about a person except the stuff we're ashamed of. They don't understand real embarrassment." We went inside the ranger station and Jake locked the door behind us. The building was small, just one room with a desk, some chairs, and a radio. Jake tried the radio, but all we got was static. "No, one's going to help us," I said. It wasn't a question. "No," Jake said, "we're on our own." That's when the memories that weren't mine got stronger. I was sitting in the chair, and suddenly I wasn't me anymore. I was a woman named Mary, and it was my wedding day in 1962. I could feel the white dress on my skin and smell my mother's perfume. I could hear the church bells ringing. But then Mary's memory got mixed up with another one. Now I was a little boy named Tommy, and it was my first day of school. I was carrying a lunchbox and my mom was walking me to the classroom. Then I was an old man named Frank, and I was dying in a hospital bed. I could feel the pain in my chest and see my family crying around me. "Ellie!" Jake was shaking me. "Ellie, wake up!" I opened my eyes. I was still in the ranger station, but I felt sick and confused. "What happened?" I asked. "You were gone for about 10 minutes. You were talking, but it wasn't your voice. You were speaking like different people, an old man, a young woman, a child. The stolen memories were getting stronger. I could feel other people's lives mixing with mine, like someone was pouring different colors of paint into my head. Jake, I think I'm losing myself." He knelt down next to my chair. "Tell me something only you would know, something personal that no one else could have." I tried to think, but it was hard. I used to have a stuffed rabbit when I was little. His name was Mr. Hops, and I took him everywhere. When I was 7, I lost him at the grocery store and cried for 3 days. Jake smiled. "Good. Hold on to that. Hold on to the things that make you you." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if the memory was real. Had I really had a stuffed rabbit, or was that someone else's childhood? Jake went to look out the window, and his face went white. "Ellie, we have a problem." I looked where he was pointing. There were people walking out of the woods. Lots of people, families, kids, old folks. They all looked normal, but they were all walking in the exact same way, taking the exact same steps at the exact same time. "They're all connected," Jake whispered, "like they're sharing one brain." The people surrounded the ranger station. They didn't try to break in or make noise. They just stood there, staring at us through the windows. Then they all started talking, at once, but they were saying the same words in perfect unison. Eleanor Brennan, we know you're in there. We know you're fighting the change. But you can't fight forever. The memories will keep coming until there's nothing left of you. Jake grabbed my hand. Don't listen to them. But the voices kept going. You've already been changed more than you know. The guilt about David, that's not even yours anymore. That belongs to Dr. Sarah Chen, a psychiatrist we took 3 years ago. Your real memories are almost gone. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. That's not true. Jake Morrison, the voices said, turning to him. Son of Richard. Morrison, you know who you really are. You know what you're becoming. Stop fighting it. Jake's hand was shaking in mine. They're lying. Your father wasn't killed by us, the voices continued. He joined us. He became one of us willingly, and he made sure you would too when the time was right. Shut up, Jake yelled. But the voices kept talking. You can feel it starting, can't you? The connection. The way you knew exactly where to find Ellie, the way you knew exactly what to do. You're not here to save her, you're here to help her become one of us. Jake let go of my hand and stepped away from me. Jake, I said. He was holding his head, looking confused and scared. I can hear them, in my head. They're talking to me. Don't listen to them. But what if they're right, he said, looking at me with tears in his eyes. What if I'm not here to help? You? What if I'm here to help them? The people outside started moving closer to the building, not fast, just slow and steady, like they had all the time in the world. We need to get out of here, I said. Jake nodded, but he still looked confused. There's a back door. We can try to make it to the truck. We snuck out the back while the people were focused on the front of the building. But when we got to the truck, Jake stopped. Ellie, I need to tell you something. Can it wait? They're going to find us. No, it can't wait. He looked scared and guilty. I've been having dreams about this place my whole life. Dreams where I was one of them. And in the dreams, I was happy about it. The people started coming around the building toward us. Get in the truck, Jake. What if I can't control it? What if I hurt you? Then I'll use one of your dad's recordings on you too, I said. But right now, you're still you. I can tell because you're scared of what you might become. Those things out there aren't scared of anything. Jake got in the truck and started it up. We drove away from the ranger station, but I could see in the mirrors that the people weren't chasing us. They were just standing there watching us go, like they knew something we didn't. Where are we going? I asked. There's one more place my dad told me about. A cave system up in the hills. He said it's where they come from. Shouldn't we be trying to get away from where they come from? We can't leave the valley, Ellie. I tried that before you got here. The roads all lead back to the same places. We're trapped here until tomorrow night. What happens tomorrow night? Jake was quiet for a long time. My dad's note said something about the moon and stars lining up in a special way. He thought that's when they'd try to spread out to other places. Other places like cities? Yeah, like everywhere. We drove up a winding mountain road as the sun finally started to set. But even though it was getting dark, I could still see everything clearly, like my eyes were getting better at seeing in the dark. Jake, are my eyes glowing? He looked at me and his face went pale, a little bit yellow like theirs. It's happening to me too, isn't it? I'm changing. We'll figure it out, he said, but his voice cracked when he said it. When we got to the caves, Jake parked the truck and grabbed a flashlight and his dad's tape recorder. If I start acting like them, he said, play my dad's voice. He recorded himself too, just in case. And if I start acting like them? Jake looked at me sadly. Then I guess we're both lost. We walked into the dark cave, and with each step, I could feel more memories that weren't mine flooding into my head. 1,000 different lives, 1,000 different deaths, all mixing together until I couldn't tell where I ended and they began. Behind us, I could hear something following in the darkness. Not footsteps, something bigger, breathing slow and deep. Whatever was in charge of all those people, whatever was stealing our memories and copying our faces, it was coming for us. And I wasn't sure how much of me would be left by the time it arrived. The cave was deeper than it looked from outside. Our flashlight beam seemed to get swallowed up by the darkness ahead of us. The air smelled old and wet, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. "Stay close," Jake whispered, but his voice echoed strangely, like the cave was much bigger than we thought. We walked for maybe 10 minutes before we found the first room. It wasn't natural. Someone had carved it out of the rock. The walls were covered with pictures, not painted pictures, but photographs. Hundreds of them. All the photos showed the same thing. Families, couples, children, normal people living normal lives. But something was wrong with every single picture. The smiles were too wide. The eyes were too bright. Everyone looked happy, but not in a real way. "These are the people they've taken," Jake said, shining his light across the wall. "Look at the dates. The photos went back decades. Some looked like they were from the 1800s, others from last year. In every photo, the people looked perfect, too perfect." "Jake," I said, pointing to a photo near the bottom, "that's my Uncle Thomas." There he was, smiling that same too wide smile, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. The date on the photo was from 2 weeks ago. "And that's my dad," Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. His father was in a photo from 20 years ago, but he looked exactly the same age as in the recent ones, like he'd stopped aging the day he disappeared. We kept walking deeper into the cave. The next room was bigger, with a high ceiling that our flashlight couldn't reach, and it was full of people. They were all sitting in chairs arranged in perfect rows, like a classroom or a church. Men, women, children, old people. They were all staring straight ahead with those same two bright eyes. None of them moved. None of them breathed. They just sat there, watching something we couldn't see. "Are they alive?" I whispered. "I don't know," Jake said. That's when one of them turned to look at us. It was a little girl, maybe 8 years old, with pigtails and a pink dress. She smiled. "Hello, Eleanor," she said in a voice that was too old for her body. "Hello, Jake. We've been waiting for you." More of them started turning to look at us. Their heads moved at exactly the same time, making the same creaking sound. "You're just in time for the lesson," the little girl said. "Would you like to sit down?" "What lesson?" I asked, even though I didn't really want to know. "How to stop being human," she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. That's when I heard it. A voice coming from the back of the room, where the darkness was thickest. It sounded like dozens of people talking at the same time, but somehow it made perfect sense. "Eleanor Brennan," the voices said, "former psychiatric nurse, carries guilt about patient suicide. Excellent candidate for consciousness transfer due to existing psychological fractures." The voices knew everything about me. Everything. "Jake Morrison," they continued, "son of Richard Morrison, genetically compatible with our species, bred specifically for leadership role in expansion project." Jake's hand found mine in the dark. "That's not true," he said, but he didn't sound sure. "Come forward," the voices said. "Meet your new teacher." A shape moved in the darkness at the back of the room. It was big, bigger than a person, but it walked upright like a man. When it stepped into our flashlight beam, I saw what it really was. It looked like a man, but wrong. Too tall, too thin, with arms that hung down past its knees. Its face was almost human, but the eyes were yellow, and the mouth was full of teeth that were too sharp and too many. But the worst part was that it was wearing clothes, a doctor's coat like the ones we wore at the hospital, and it was carrying a clipboard. "Good evening," it said in a voice that sounded like it had learned to talk by listening to doctors. "I am Dr. Collins. Well, I was Dr. Collins. Now I'm something much better. It sat down in a chair that was too small for its body. The clipboard balanced on its long legs. Eleanor, you've been experiencing memory displacement, it said, like we were in a normal therapy session. Tell me, how does that make you feel? I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. This thing was trying to give me therapy. It's perfectly normal to feel confused, Dr. Collins continued. Memory integration is always difficult during the early stages, but don't worry, soon you won't remember being human at all. She's not going to become one of you, Jake said, but his voice was shaking. Dr. Collins turned its yellow eyes to Jake. Ah, Jake, you're fighting the change more than we expected. Your father was much more cooperative. My father is dead. Your father is right here. Another shape moved in the darkness. This one looked more human, but I could tell it wasn't. It had Jake's eyes and Jake's face, but older. Hello, son, it said. I've missed you. Jake started, crying again. You're not my dad. I am your father, the thing said. Just improved. I've learned so much since I joined them, Jake. I can see things humans can't see. I can hear thoughts from across the country. I can live forever. But you're not alive, Jake said. I'm more alive than I ever was as a human, and soon you will be too. Dr. Collins looked at its clipboard. The alignment begins in 6 hours. It said, by tomorrow night we will have expanded to every major city in North America. By next week, Europe and Asia. Humanity's time is ending, but don't be sad. You're going to be part of something much better. The thing that looked like Jake's father stepped closer. The genetic modifications we made to your bloodline have been passed down for 3 generations, Jake. You were born for this. Stop fighting it. I could see Jake changing. His eyes were getting brighter, more yellow. His breathing was getting slower and deeper. Jake, I said, remember what you told me. Hold on to what makes you, you. But he was looking at his father, with an expression I'd never seen before, like he was hungry for something. It doesn't hurt, his father said. The transformation is actually quite pleasant. You'll keep all your memories, but you'll see them differently. You'll understand that being human was just the first stage of your development. Jake, don't listen to him, I said. But Jake was nodding. Maybe they're right. Maybe this is better. Dr. Collins made a note on its clipboard. Excellent. Progress. Jake, would you like to help Eleanor with her transformation? It would be so much easier with a friend. Jake turned to look at me, and for a moment his eyes were completely yellow. Ellie, he said in a voice that wasn't quite his anymore. It's not scary. I can feel all of them in my head, and it's peaceful. No more worrying. No more being afraid. We're all connected. I grabbed the tape recorder from his belt and hit play. His father's voice filled the cave. Jake, if you're hearing this, then I'm probably gone. But I want you to know that I love you, and I'm proud of the man you've become. Stay human, son. No matter what they offer you, stay human. The moment the recording started, Jake screamed and grabbed his head. The yellow light in his eyes flickered. Turn it off, Dr. Collins said, but its voice sounded panicked now. I'm proud of the man you've become, Jake's father's voice continued. You have your mother's kindness and your grandmother's strength. You're the best thing I ever did with my life. Jake was on his knees now, crying real tears again. The yellow was fading from his eyes. I remember, he whispered. I remember who I am. But Dr. Collins was getting angry. It stood up, and I could see it was even bigger than I thought, maybe 8 feet tall. Enough, it said. We don't need your cooperation. The process works just as well if you're unconscious. It reached for Jake with those long arms. That's when I remembered something from my nursing training. I'd worked with patients who had multiple personalities, people who had different voices and memories all mixed up in their heads. And I knew that the human mind could only hold so much before it broke. I grabbed the tape recorder and started playing all of Jake's father's recordings at once. Every voice, every person who had been taken from Bone Hollow over the years, all of them talking at the same time. The effect was immediate. Dr. Collins staggered backward, holding its head. Too many, it said, too many voices. All the people sitting in the chairs started moving at once, but not together like before. They were all moving differently, like they were each trying to be different people at the same time. The little girl in the pink dress was speaking in an old man's voice. A middle-aged man was crying like a child. An elderly woman was laughing like a teenager. The voices are competing, I said to Jake. They can't handle all the different personalities at once. Jake understood immediately. He grabbed the tape recorder and turned the volume up as high as it would go. The voices of everyone who had ever lived in Bone Hollow filled the cave. Mothers talking to their children, fathers telling jokes, grandparents sharing stories, all the human voices that had been stolen and locked away. Dr. Collins fell to its knees. "Stop," it begged. "Please stop." But we didn't stop. We let all those voices fight for control of the monsters that had taken them. One by one, the people in chairs started to change. Their faces became more human, their eyes less bright. Some of them looked confused, like they were waking up from a long dream. "Where am I?" asked a woman in the front row. "What happened to me?" asked an old man. But others were changing in a different way. They were becoming more like Dr. Collins, taller, thinner, with yellow eyes and sharp teeth. "The process is irreversible for some," Dr. Collins said, looking up at us with hatred. "But not for you, Eleanor. You're still in the early stages." It was right. I could feel the stolen memories fighting in my head. Mary's wedding, Tommy's first, day of school, Frank's death. They were all trying to take over. "Jake," I said, "I don't think I can fight this much longer." But Jake was changing too. Not into one of them, but into something else, something in between. "I can feel all of them," he said. "All the people they've taken. And I can feel the network they've built. It goes everywhere, Ellie. Every city, every country. They're getting ready to activate it all at once." His eyes were glowing, but not yellow like theirs, more like silver. "What are you becoming?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "But I think I can stop them. I think I can break the network from the inside." "What will happen to you?" He looked at me sadly. "I don't think I'll be human anymore, but maybe I can still be me." And the recordings were still playing, and more of the people in chairs were waking up. Some ran for the exit. Others just sat there, looking lost and confused. Dr. Collins was getting smaller, shrinking back into something more human-looking. But its eyes were still yellow, and its teeth were still sharp. "You can't stop what's coming," it said. "Even if you destroy this place, there are others. Hundreds of others. The network is too big now." Jake closed his eyes, and I could see him concentrating. "I can feel them," he said. "All the places like this. And I can feel the connection between them." "Jake, don't..." But it was too late. Jake opened his eyes, and they were completely silver now. He smiled at me, but it was still his smile, still human. "I love you, Ellie," he said. "Remember that when this is over." Then he did something that made the whole cave shake. I don't know how to describe it, except that he reached out with his mind and grabbed hold of every connection the monsters had made. And then he broke them all at once. The sound was horrible, like 1,000 windows breaking or 1,000,000 voices, screaming at the same time. Dr. Collins and the thing that looked like Jake's father both collapsed, writhing on the ground. All around the world, I knew that creatures like them were feeling the same thing. The network was falling apart. But Jake was falling apart too. The silver light in his eyes was getting brighter and brighter. "Go," he said. "Get out of here. Take the survivors and go. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Someone needs to tell the world what happened here. Someone needs to make sure they don't try this again." I wanted to stay, but I knew he was right. I helped the confused people. who were still human get out of the cave. Some of them had been missing for years. Others had families who thought they were dead. As we reached the exit, I looked back one more time. Jake was still there, glowing brighter and brighter. And for just a moment, I could swear I saw his father's spirit standing next to him. The real one, not the monster version. Then, the cave collapsed. When the rescue teams found us 3 days later, I told them everything. They didn't believe most of it, of course. They said it was mass hallucination caused by gas leaks in the cave system. But I know what really happened. And so, do the other survivors? The strange thing is, I still have some of the stolen memories. Sometimes I remember Mary's wedding day like it was my own. Sometimes I dream about Tommy's first day of school. And sometimes, when I'm very quiet, I can still hear Frank's voice telling me about his grandchildren. I don't think these memories are trying to replace me anymore. I think they're just part of me now. All the people who were taken, all the lives that were stolen, they live on in the people who survived. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. I've started noticing things, people who smile too wide, people whose eyes are a little too bright, people who seem to know things about me that I never told them. Jake broke the network, but I don't think he got all of them. I think some of them are still out there, still pretending to be human. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, I wonder if I'm still entirely human myself. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that I've started keeping a list of people who seem wrong. People who might be like the things from Bone Hollow. And the list is getting longer every day. Maybe I'm just paranoid. Maybe the experience in the cave damaged my mind more than I thought. Or maybe Jake didn't break the network completely. Maybe some of them are still out there, still spreading, still replacing people one by one. I guess you'll have to decide for yourself. After all, how well do you really know the people around you? How sure are you that they're still the same people they were yesterday? And how sure are you that you're still you? Because if you've made it this far in my story, if you've been listening to every word, then you've been in my head for a while. Now, you've been seeing through my eyes, thinking my thoughts, remembering my memories. So let me ask you something. Do you remember a time before you started reading this? Do you remember who you were before you became part of my story? Or have you always been here in Bone Hollow, listening to the voices in the dark? Think carefully. And whatever you do, don't look in the mirror tonight. You might not recognize the person looking back at you.